I never meant to snoop through my mother's things. But when I noticed the edge of that cream-colored envelope peeking out from beneath her jewelry box, something made me pause. Maybe it was the way she'd been acting lately. All those hushed phone calls and worried glances at Dad during dinner. Or maybe it was just that sixth sense you get when your whole world is about to shift beneath your feet. My name is Riley, and until that moment, I thought I understood my place in our family. I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need much attention because my sister Savannah took up all the oxygen in every room she entered. The letter trembled in my hands as I read it. A mortgage application. Not just any mortgage. They were planning to take out a second mortgage on our family home. The one Dad had spent 30 years paying off. And there, in my mother's neat handwriting, was the reason. Business investment opportunity for daughter's entrepreneurial venture. Daughter. Singular. Not daughters. I heard the front door open downstairs, followed by my sister's voice floating up. Mom, where are you? I've got the most amazing news about the business plan. Footsteps on the stairs. I scrambled to return the letter exactly as I'd found it, my heart pounding against my ribs. But as I slid it back under the jewelry box, another document caught my eye. A bank statement showing my parents' retirement savings, nearly depleted. Mom? Savannah's voice was closer now. I backed away from the dresser, my mind racing. They were going to risk everything, their home, their retirement, their security, for Savannah's latest scheme. The same sister who'd already burned through her college fund starting and abandoning 3 different business ventures. The bedroom door started to open, and I ducked into the adjoining bathroom. As I pressed myself against the cool tile wall, listening to Savannah's excited chatter about profit margins and market research, one thought crystallized in my mind. I couldn't let them do this. Not this time. Not when I knew what I knew now. The weekly family dinner felt like a minefield tonight. Mom had outdone herself with a pot roast that nobody was really eating. Too caught up in Savannah's animated presentation about her latest business venture. I pushed my carrots around the plate, the letter I'd found earlier burning a hole in my thoughts. So that's why I need to expand now, Savannah was saying, gesturing with her fork. The market research shows huge potential for organic baby clothing, especially with my social media following. Mom beamed. It's wonderful to see you so passionate, sweetheart. Walter, isn't it exciting? Dad nodded without looking up from his plate. The silence that followed felt heavy, like storm clouds gathering. Actually, I cleared my throat. I've been meaning to tell you all something too. I got accepted into that graphic design program I applied for. Oh, that's nice, dear, Mom said, already turning back to Savannah. Now, about the storefront you were looking at. It's a full scholarship. I pressed on, my voice stronger. They only accept 5 students each year. Savannah's fork clattered against her plate. Mom, speaking of the storefront, I'll need to move quickly. There's another buyer interested. How much? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Excuse me? Savannah's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together. The storefront. How much do you need? The room went still. Mom's hand tightened around her water glass. That's not really your concern, Riley, Mom said, her tone sharp. Your sister has a solid business plan, and we're handling it as a family. As a family? I laughed, the sound hollow. Is that what we're calling it when you mortgage the house without telling Dad? Dad's head snapped up. Mom's face went pale. Savannah's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I think you're confused. Savannah recovered first, her voice honey-sweet. Mom and Dad are just helping me invest in my future. Maybe if you had shown more initiative over the years. I stood up, so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. Initiative? Like the 3 failed businesses they've already funded for you. Riley, Mom's voice cracked like a whip. That's enough. Go to your room if you can't be supportive of your sister's dreams. I was 22 years old, and my mother had just sent me to my room. The absurdity of it all hit me like a punch to the gut. 3 days after the dinner disaster, I found Savannah crying in her car outside our parents' house. Not the pretty, camera-ready tears she usually deployed when things didn't go her way, but real, ugly sobbing that made her whole body shake. I should have walked away. Instead, I tapped on her window. Go away, she hiccuped, but unlocked the door anyway. The inside of her luxury SUV smelled like desperation and expensive perfume. Crumpled papers covered the passenger seat, bank statements, overdue notices, and a letter from her landlord threatening eviction from her storefront. "It's all falling apart," Savannah whispered, mascara tracking down her cheeks. "The organic supplier doubled their prices, and half my inventory is just sitting there. Nobody wants to pay premium prices for baby clothes during a recession." I picked up one of the statements. The numbers were worse than I'd imagined. Way worse. "Does Ethan know?" She shook her head. "He thinks the business is doing great. Everyone does. Mom and Dad." Her voice cracked. "They're so proud of me, Riley. For once in my life, I'm not just the pretty face who married well. I'm the successful daughter. And their house is going to be the collateral for your failure." The words came out sharper than I intended. "You don't understand." She grabbed my arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my skin. "I can turn this around. I just need more time, more capital. The mortgage money would help me clear the debts, rebrand, maybe pivot to a different market. Like you did with the yoga studio? Or the juice bar? Or that ridiculous lifestyle coaching business." Her face hardened. "At least I'm trying something. What are you doing with your life, Riley?" "Living at home, working part-time at a coffee shop. I got a full scholarship. To learn how to draw pretty pictures?" She laughed, but it sounded desperate. "Please. Mom and Dad need something real to be proud of. And right now, I'm all they've got." I pulled my arm away, feeling the crescents her nails had left in my skin. "You're going to destroy them." "No," she said quietly, her eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. "I'm going to save them from having 2 disappointments for daughters. And you're going to help me by keeping your mouth shut." The mortgage papers arrived on a Tuesday. I watched from the kitchen as Mom spread them across the dining room table, her reading glasses perched on her nose while Dad hovered uncertainly behind her. The scene felt surreal, like watching a slow-motion car crash. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Can you watch the twins tonight? Emergency meeting with our investors." I nearly dropped the phone. Savannah hadn't told him either. "Sure." I typed back, my fingers trembling. "What time?" The twins were already waiting when I arrived, backpacks stuffed with superhero action figures and fruit snacks. Ethan looked stressed, his tie loosened and hair disheveled. "Thanks, Riley. You're a lifesaver," he said, grabbing his briefcase. "Savannah's been so busy with the business lately, I barely see her. But these investor meetings could change everything." I forced a smile. "Everything okay?" "Just some cash flow issues. Normal startup stuff." He checked his watch. "The nanny usually handles evenings, but she called in sick. Savannah's at some marketing event." She wasn't. I'd seen her car at our parents' house less than an hour ago. After Ethan left, I sat on the floor with Caleb and Dylan, building a Lego fortress while my mind raced. Their college funds were probably already gone, funneled into their mother's failing business. Now their grandparents' house was next. "Aunt Riley," Caleb looked up from his blocks, "why is Mommy always crying in her office?" Dylan nodded. "She thinks we're sleeping, but we hear her." My chest tightened. Sometimes grown-ups get scared too. "Is that why Daddy's always mad now?" Dylan whispered. Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a text from Mom. "Mortgage approved. Don't tell your sister yet. We want to surprise her." I stared at the message, then at my nephew's innocent faces. The weight of everyone's secrets pressed down on me like a physical thing. Someone had to stop this before it destroyed our entire family. But as I looked around at the photos on the walls, happy family portraits hiding a house of cards, I realized that speaking up might destroy us just as thoroughly as staying silent. I hadn't planned to confront them that morning. But when I walked into the kitchen and saw Mom writing a check, another check, while Savannah hovered nearby, something inside me snapped. "Don't cash that," I said. Mom barely glanced up. "Riley, this doesn't concern you." "Really?" "Because I think the imminent destruction of our family concerns everyone." I pulled out my phone, hand shaking. Should I call Ethan? Ask him about last night's investor meeting? Savannah's face went white. You wouldn't dare. What investor meeting? Mom looked between us, confusion creasing her forehead. The one that didn't happen, I said, because there are no investors. There's nothing left to invest in, is there, Savannah? Stop it. Savannah's voice cracked. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I saw the eviction notice, the overdue bills, the bounce checks. Mom stood up slowly. What is she talking about, Savannah? She's jealous. Savannah's eyes filled with tears. She's always been jealous. Ever since I started succeeding. Succeeding? I laughed. Your business is hemorrhaging money. The twins hear you crying every night. Ethan's clueless, thinking you're at marketing events while you're here, bleeding Mom and Dad dry. That's enough. Mom slammed her hand on the counter. Riley, how dare you attack your sister like this? After everything she's built. Everything she's built is a lie. Dad appeared in the doorway, drawn by the shouting. For once, he didn't look away. The mortgage papers, he said quietly. Where are they? Walter, please. Mom started, but he cut her off. I want to see them. Now. Savannah moved first, reaching for her oversized purse. But I was closer to where she'd left it. The papers spilled across the floor as we both grabbed for them. Bank statements, bounce checks, and there, at the bottom, a half-completed loan application with forged signatures. Dad's signatures. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's hand covered her mouth. Dad stared at the papers, then at Savannah, then at me. For the first time in my life, I saw real anger in his eyes. But it wasn't directed at Savannah. Riley, he said, his voice trembling, I think you should leave. The motel room smelled like stale cigarettes and broken dreams. 3 days after being kicked out, I was still wearing the same clothes I'd left in, staring at my phone as messages piled up. Most were from Mom, ranging from angry to pleading. A few from Ethan, asking why I wasn't answering Savannah's calls. Nothing from Dad. A knock at the door made me jump. Housekeeping. Not today. I called back, my voice rough from disuse. It's me. Savannah. Of course it was Savannah. She'd probably tracked my credit card. She'd always been good at getting what she wanted. I opened the door just enough to see her perfect makeup, her designer outfit, her concerned expression that looked rehearsed for an audience that wasn't there. You look terrible, she said. What do you want? She pushed past me into the room. To fix this. Mom and Dad are devastated. They think you're having some kind of breakdown. I laughed. Of course they do. Because heaven forbid their golden child be the one with problems. I admitted everything, she said quietly. About the business failing. About the forged signatures. My heart stopped. What? I told them I was desperate. That I made a mistake. She sat on the bed, smoothing her skirt. They've agreed to help me restructure. Start fresh. We can all move past this, Riley. Come home. Move past this. The words felt like glass in my throat. You committed fraud, Savannah. You nearly destroyed our parents financially. And they're just forgiving you. Family forgives. She reached for my hand. Mom suggested we could work together. Your graphic design skills could really help with the rebranding. I jerked away. Are you serious? This isn't about your business anymore. This is about you never facing consequences. Ever. What do you want from me? Her voice cracked. To lose everything? To watch my marriage fall apart? To let my children grow up knowing their mother is a failure? I want the truth to matter. The truth. She stood, suddenly cold. The truth is, you're alone in a cheap motel while I'm going home to our family. Maybe it's time to ask yourself why that is. She left me there, surrounded by peeling wallpaper and the echo of her words, realizing that even when I was right, I was still somehow wrong. The email from Ethan arrived at midnight. Subject line: Need to talk. Attached was a scan of Savannah's latest bank statement, the real one, not the doctored version she'd shown our parents. I called him immediately. She's planning to move back home, he said, his voice hollow. Did you know? How did you find out? She left her laptop open. There were emails to real estate agents about selling our house. Messages to Mom about converting Dad's study into a playroom for the twins.
He paused.
Why didn't you tell me? The guilt hit like a physical blow. Would you have believed me?
Silence.
I'm handling it, he finally said. But Riley, the twins, they need stability. After we hung up, I sat in my motel room, staring at the ceiling until sunrise. Then I drove to my parents' house. Savannah's car was already there. Through the window, I could see her sitting at the kitchen table with Mom, heads bent together over papers. Planning her next escape route, no doubt. The screen door creaked as I entered. They both looked up, Mom's face hardening, Savannah's going carefully blank. What are you doing here? Mom started, but I held up my hand. Ethan knows. Savannah's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. What?
He knows everything.
About the business, the forged documents, your plans to move back here. You had no right. Savannah stood up, so quickly her chair toppled backward. I didn't tell him.
You did.
With your carelessness, your lies, your… Girls, please, Mom interrupted, but we ignored her. You're destroying everything, Savannah hissed. My marriage, my children's stability. No. I stepped closer. You did that. And now you're running away instead of facing it. What would you know about facing anything? You're living in a motel, hiding from reality. Reality. I laughed. Reality is that your husband is meeting with lawyers right now. Reality is that your children cry themselves to sleep because their mother's never home. Reality is that you're about to lose everything, and for once, I'm not going to help you hide from it. The slap echoed through the kitchen. My cheeks stung, but I didn't flinch. Savannah. Mom gasped. But Savannah was already crying, her perfect mask finally cracking. What am I supposed to do? For once in your life, I said quietly, tell the truth. 6 months later, I stood in front of my first gallery showing, surrounded by my digital artwork. Each piece told a story of family secrets, broken trust, and eventual healing. I'd turned our drama into art, and people were actually buying it. This one's my favorite, a familiar voice said behind me. Dad stood there, looking older but somehow lighter, studying a piece that showed 2 sisters as children, their shadows telling a different story than their smiling faces. I wasn't sure you'd come, I said. Your mother's here too. She's pretending to understand modern art by the wine table. We shared a small laugh, the first in what felt like years. Savannah started therapy, he said quietly. She and Ethan are working things out. The twins are adjusting. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Riley, he touched my arm gently. I found something in your old room. When you left. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Inside was a college acceptance letter from 5 years ago to an art school in New York. Full scholarship. Mom told me I wasn't accepted, I whispered. She thought she was protecting you, keeping you close. We both did. He sighed. We were wrong about a lot of things. Before I could respond, Mom appeared, clutching a glass of wine like a shield. The sunset piece, she said, pointing to my largest work. You used my jewelry box in it. I did. And the letter behind it. She swallowed hard. That's the mortgage application, isn't it? Yes. She nodded slowly. You made something beautiful out of our mistakes. A comfortable silence fell between us, filled with things we weren't ready to say, but finally understood. Across the room, I spotted Savannah slipping in quietly, looking smaller somehow in her simple dress and minimal makeup. She caught my eye but didn't approach, offering a slight nod instead. We weren't ready for more, but maybe that was okay. Some stories don't end with perfect resolution. They end with the possibility of one. I turned back to my parents, these imperfect people who had raised 2 imperfect daughters, and realized that sometimes the truth isn't about revenge or justice. Sometimes it's just about finally seeing things as they are and finding the courage to paint them that way.
My husband has an intense attachment and obsession with his sister, often referred to as a sister complex. My sister-in-law and her husband have taken to invading our home, treating it like their own. and occupying our space as they please. They rummage through my personal belongings, using and taking them without permission. My husband, for his part, turns a blind eye, which emboldens them to gradually escalate their behavior. I cannot tolerate this anymore. From here on, I would like to share my struggle until I decided to divorce. My name is Jessica, and I recently turned 28 and received a promotion at work. It may seem early for some, but I feel that my efforts have paid off, and I'm quite satisfied in my personal life. I was enjoying the blissful everyday life with my recently married husband, Tom. I was recognized at work and married the man I love, so my life was somewhat satisfactory. One day, I was assigned to go on a business trip. As it was my first time, I was a little apprehensive but also excited since it was an opportunity brought about by my promotion. After the promotion, I had been given more business trips, often day trips, probably in consideration of my newlywed status, but this time, I was assigned to go on a 3-day business trip. I communicated this to my husband. "Oh, that's harsh on a newlywed, huh? Well, I'll call Sarah over," he said. Sarah is Tom's younger sister. She is married, but Tom still dotes on her in a way that's somewhat unsettling. "What do you mean? Why is Sarah coming over?" I asked. "Well, it would be tough for me alone, and Sarah's good at house chores. I thought if she helps out, we can manage while you're gone, so go on your business trip without worrying. Oh, and don't forget to bring back souvenirs." I wanted to say, "No, you should be able to do some house chores too," but I held back. Personally, I wanted to avoid having Sarah over at our house. She's someone who lacks common sense and behaves as if our home were her own. She would frequently visit unannounced, putting me in a bind. However, it seems she's been communicating with Tom often. One day, Sarah and her husband showed up at our place unannounced. I was hoping Sarah's husband would be a sensible person, but my hopes were dashed. Sarah's husband also lacks common sense, and both of them were incredibly selfish. "Hey there, are you preparing dinner? I'm starving. Make sure to prepare my shirt too," he said. What's more complicated is that Tom seems to dislike Sarah's husband. He harbors some animosity towards him for marrying his beloved sister. Additionally, Sarah's husband has a gambling problem, spending his weekdays after work and weekends at the local casinos. "What the hell, you're here too? I didn't invite you. You're a bit cold to me." "Huh? Well, I don't care. I'm just here to eat for free," he said bluntly. They think only about themselves. My husband keeps grinning at Sarah, which I find absolutely infuriating. Moreover, it seems Tom lets Sarah into our house even when I'm not around. As soon as I come home, she'd be relaxing like it's her own place and say, "Hey Jessica, I'm hungry," as if it's a habit. Despite noticing my frustration, Sarah often takes and uses my belongings without my permission. She uses my cosmetics freely, and when they run out, she says, "Hey sis, this one's all gone. Buy me a new one, will ya?" Who do you think you are, using my stuff and asking me to buy more? I could possibly say, my husband, Tom, doesn't understand my complaint, saying, "She's just happy to have a sister now and wants to share things with you. Aren't you happy to have a sister too?" It's baffling, and he won't take my concerns seriously. With Sarah planning to come over while I'm on a business trip, who knows what she'll get up to? I've got to find a way to stop this. I say, "Sarah, you're also married and must have housework to do. Could you manage without being here for 3 days? I'll prepare meals for those days." But Tom responds, No, she's happy to come. Her husband is always out gambling. She's lonely. Are you jealous or something? We're very close siblings. We help each other in times of need. Just go on your business trip and don't worry. Inside, I'm screaming. I'm not jealous. I just don't want Sarah in my house. But all I can manage to say out loud is that so?" Without another word, I go on my business trip, fearing for my belongings and worrying that the house will be taken over in my absence. Returning home after my 3-day business trip, filled with anxiety, I find Sarah lounging around. Despite her promise to take care of the house, it's a disaster, and daily necessities haven't been replenished. "Welcome back. Thanks for your help with everything. You can go home now," I say, trying to be polite but firm. Sarah responds, "What? I'm staying over. We're having my favorite for dinner tonight." "What? What do you mean?" I ask, baffled. Sarah and I decided to order sushi tonight." I was flabbergasted at my husband, who seemed so happy about this. We always decide what to eat together on the day I return from business trips. Then I realize Tom hasn't contacted me at all during this trip. I try to talk to Tom about this privately. Hey, I just got back from my business trip and I'm really tired. I want to relax without having to consider anyone else. You understand, right? But he just brushes me off. It's fine, right? You two are like sisters. I feel a surge of annoyance at his nonchalant response. Apparently, Sarah had been staying over for the entire 3 days while I was away. Despite this, the house is not cleaned, and I wonder what she was doing all this time. In addition, when I go into my room, I find some of my cosmetics and accessories missing. The expensive new toner I recently purchased, my absolute favorite, seems to be running out way too quickly, considering I've been using it sparingly due to its high cost. Moreover, several of my accessories have disappeared. Angrily, I ask Sarah, "Sarah, did you use my stuff?" To which she casually replies, "Sorry, it was just perfect on me, so I used it, but I'm going to give it back, so don't worry." Infuriated by her nonchalant attitude, I decide to discuss this with Tom again. "Come on, she's just borrowing. It's fine. You're too narrow-minded. Why can't you trust my sister?" he says dismissively. Nothing I say seems to make a difference. Exhausted, I can't accept this, but I fall asleep anyway. 3 weeks later, I get another business trip offer, and it's for a week this time. When I inform my husband, Tom, he is surprised. "A week? That's quite a long time." "Well, I'll ask my sister to take care of the house again, so don't worry and go." I decide to address the issue directly. "I don't want you to invite Sarah to our house anymore." Hearing this, Tom gets angry. "Why not? She's our family. The last time, you said you asked Sarah for help with housework, but nothing was tidied up when I got back." Struck by this, Tom averts his eyes without a word. "I think you know this too. Sarah always takes my personal items without permission. She says she's borrowing them but never returns them." Tom seemed to concede. "All right, but I'd be in trouble if there's no one to do the laundry for a week. So, I'll have her come over for 1 day and send her home without letting her stay. Is that okay?" "Well, why don't you do the laundry?" I asked. "I've never done it before. I have no idea how." "I'll teach you how." "No, I'll just have her come for 1 day." Tom stubbornly refused to do the housework, or perhaps he just wanted to invite his sister. Exhausted, I finally said, "All right, do as you please, but make sure she doesn't stay over." I stressed this point to Tom, but I didn't trust him at all. When I returned home a week later, Sarah was lounging on our living room sofa as if it were her own, with no signs of having done any housework. "Hey, what's all this about?" "Well, there were more chores than I expected. I asked Sarah to stay over yesterday and today because it was too much for her." I thought to myself, I knew it. What do you mean? You promised it would be just 1 day. Hey, don't be so alarmed. She's your sister-in-law. Besides, you're the one who leaves for business trips. You should be grateful she's helping out, Tom said. What? You understand what business trips mean, right? It's not like I'm going out for pleasure. You keep making excuses and ignoring what I'm saying, I replied. Well, it turns out Sarah is divorced and has lost her job. There will be times when you can't handle the housework because of your trips, right? She said she's okay with it, so I thought we could let her stay with us. What? What are you talking about? Why are you making decisions without consulting me? As I've said, you can handle the housework. It's not every day. This isn't just your house. We need to support each other in tough times. You should feel sorry for her too. What are you thinking? Breaking our promise and making such decisions on your own? I can't trust you. How can you say that to your husband? It's just for a short time. Sarah promises she'll find a place to live and a job soon. We have an extra room, and she's already given up her apartment. She doesn't want to live in the house she shared with her ex. I was stunned to learn that my sister-in-law Sarah had divorced, become single, and was now asking to live with us. How dare you make decisions without consulting me? This is the last straw. You're so inconsiderate. What do you think of this family? If you're going to act like this, then do whatever you want. I grabbed my suitcase from my business trip and stormed out of the house. Leaving was the easy part, but with no clear destination, I ended up at an internet cafe. After a short break, I started to calm down. At that moment, my husband Tom called me. Come on, Jess, you don't need to be this upset. My sister is in trouble. I can't just ignore her. Now that you've cooled down, think about it. She's offering to help with housework. It's not a bad deal, right? Do you remember the promises we made? Besides, I can't trust your sister Sarah. Honestly, I can't stand her. What are you talking about? If you're so opposed to living with her, why don't you just leave? Is that really okay with you? Fine, I'll do it. I don't mind at all, but don't come crying to me if you regret it. Tom hung up angrily. After the call, my feelings for Tom began to cool rapidly. I'd had enough. He'd caused me so much pain, and now he was pushing me out, but I'd make sure he regretted it. After that, I devised a plan and gathered the necessary supplies. I then set my plan into motion, and as expected, I received a call from Tom. Just hear me out. This morning, out of nowhere, John showed up at our place. Tom was panicking, stumbling over his words. Ah, your brother is here. I invited John, who is great at house chores, to help out. I also spoke with Tom's parents and sent Sarah back to their place. With Sarah gone, it was just John at the house. Tom, flustered, said, "This is so strange. Why did you bring him over without asking me?" I thought it might be tough for you without me here. John is good at housework, so I thought he could be helpful. Tom, it's difficult for me when someone suddenly shows up and starts doing chores. I feel like I have to be on my best behavior in my own home. Why? Sarah did the exact same thing to me. At least you could have given me a heads up. You would have refused if I had told you beforehand. Besides, I was never informed in advance when Sarah was coming over. Tom fell silent, looking guilty. How selfish can you be? Expecting everything to go smoothly for you but not for me when I do the same thing? It seemed he was beginning to realize his mistake. But this was just the beginning. The real revenge was only starting. So that's the situation. You can ask John about the housework issues. Bye. I hung up the phone before Tom could respond. He kept calling persistently, but I ignored all his calls. The next day, as planned, I asked my brother to help with the next phase of my revenge. As expected, my husband called immediately. "Jessica, I need your help," he said, his voice trembling with desperation. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Wrong? Everything's wrong. Your brother's using my stuff without asking. My suits, my bags, even the new accessories I just bought. I haven't even used them yet." "Well, you were fine with your sister doing the same thing, weren't you? Remember when I complained? You said, 'She's your sister, let her use it.' Don't be so stingy. Your selfishness is astonishing." Tom fell silent, unable to counter my argument. "I've also informed your parents. I'm sure your sister is getting an earful from them right now. She's getting exactly what she deserves. At least my in-laws are reasonable." "You involved my parents? How dare you?" "Well, you were the one who wouldn't listen to me." Tom was flustered, clearly not expecting me to involve his parents. I had even asked them not to contact him for a while, and they agreed. A few hours later, I returned home with my in-laws and sister-in-law. As soon as we walked in, my husband started venting his frustration. "You're finally back. It's been rough because of you." Instead of responding, I ignored him and gathered everyone in the living room. I played a video on the TV, and my husband and sister-in-law went silent as they watched. "What is this? Why are you showing this?" Tom demanded, bewildered. The video, captured by a hidden camera I had set up before my trip, showed my sister-in-law rummaging through my belongings and taking things without permission. It was no surprise they were stunned. "I'm sorry, but I didn't trust you too, so I recorded this before I left," I said. "You, what have you done? Is this some kind of crime?" My father-in-law erupted in fury after seeing the footage. "At your age, you still can't tell right from wrong? How shameful." My mother-in-law, also livid, had her face flushed with anger and was on the verge of tears. With that, my revenge was complete. I handed the divorce papers to Tom right there. "Are you seriously asking for a divorce over this? Is this some kind of joke? Do you think this is a joke? Do you have any idea how much this little thing, as you call it, has tormented me? You never listen when I voice my concerns and always put Sarah first. She took things from me without permission, and they were never returned. It's theft. I could even sue her. Now, sign the papers." He was visibly shaken, while my in-laws watched in silence. Eventually, he signed, resigning himself to the situation. I took the signed papers and began packing. Seeing me, Tom tried to stop me. Wait, Jessica. If you leave, I won't be able to afford the rent here. Tom was right, the apartment was well located and expensive, and he couldn't afford it on his own. My in-laws looked on with pity, but I felt no sympathy for Tom. I don't care anymore, you're a stranger to me now, you can figure it out yourself, you and your sister can find a place within your means. I left the house and went straight to file the divorce papers. I moved into an apartment closer to work. My ex-husband bombarded me with calls and emails, but I blocked all his contact. I have no idea what he's doing or where he is now, and honestly, I don't care. Free from the stress, I'm now enjoying my single life.
My name is Emma. After dropping out of high school, I channeled all my energy into my work, driven by a decision I felt was essential for me. Although my parents were initially concerned, they supported my choice, and their backing has been instrumental in my achievements. Recently, my parents, whom I deeply appreciate, shared that they are contemplating selling our family home. This house, passed down from my grandparents, has been renovated over time but has begun to show its age. With my parents growing older, they're considering moving to a barrier-free apartment and demolishing our old family home. Recognizing the house's condition, I suggested that we move in together for a while. Although I might eventually get married and we may not be able to live together indefinitely, I wanted to give back to my parents who supported me during my unconventional path. So we moved into a new apartment. It's spacious with more rooms than our old house, and being on a high floor, my parents are thrilled with the view. We even have a hobby room now. One day, while enjoying this new chapter with my parents, I received a call from my younger sister, Jane. Our relationship has been strained for years. She's always been embarrassed by my decision to leave high school. When I dropped out, Jane was furious and said, "Why are you quitting high school, Emma? I don't want anyone to know my sister dropped out. Pretend we don't know each other from now on." Despite attending different high schools, Jane was ashamed of my decision. She's always been a high achiever, attending a more prestigious school, and has frequently looked down on me. Her favorite phrase was "Emma is stupid," and she often mocked me, saying, "There's no way you'll succeed. You don't even understand that because you're stupid." I was exhausted by her constant criticism and the belief that I was a burden to our parents, so I moved out as soon as I started earning from part-time jobs. Now, 10 years later, Jane has also moved out, and there has been no communication between us. It seems she's been distant from our parents too, since she started living alone for college. When our parents decided to demolish our family home, they consulted both Jane and me. Jane's response was dismissive. "I don't care about that old house. Do whatever you want." My parents were left puzzled, wondering why Jane had become so indifferent. Then, out of the blue, Jane called. According to my mother, who answered the phone, Jane had gotten married without informing them at all. "So, you've decided to live in a condo, huh? Well, bring your husband over sometime and show us around," my mother said, revealing her surprise at Jane's marriage. Jane nonchalantly replied, "Didn't I mention it?" It also turned out that Jane hadn't planned a wedding ceremony, which seemed odd. Jane had always been the type to dream of being a princess and had even described in detail the kind of wedding dress she wanted. It was strange that someone so fixated on a grand wedding would skip it entirely. I wondered if her husband was lacking in funds, but Jane mentioned that he worked at the same prestigious company as she did, a well-known corporation with ample financial stability. This only added to the mystery. Finally, the day came when Jane visited our parents' house with her husband. "Wow, such a large and clean room. The view is amazing. Sorry for the intrusion," Jane's husband said as he stood by, while Jane, showing no hesitation, began exploring every room of her childhood home. Jane's husband, Scott, had a fresh-faced appearance and an expensive-looking watch on his wrist. Despite his polished look, he avoided making eye contact with us. After introducing himself to my parents, Scott began exploring the house with the same lack of restraint as Jane. "Your parents did really well. The station is close, and there's a shopping mall just around the corner. You've moved to a fantastic place," Scott commented. "Yeah, it's all thanks to Emma," my mother said with a smile. I modestly replied, "It wasn't a big deal," but Jane's response was deliberately cutting. "Really? You have an older sister? I didn't notice. I never imagined a place this beautiful and upscale would have an older sister living here." Jane, Emma is not freeloading, my father interjected, but Jane dismissed him, pointing at me and calling Scott over. Hey Scott, can you believe this woman is my sister? This is Jane's sister you've been talking about. I didn't realize because you two look nothing alike, Scott replied. I was stunned by the mockery from Jane and Scott. My mother chastised Jane. What are you saying? But Jane brushed it off. My sister didn't even graduate high school. She's not exactly the brightest. There's a big difference between us, especially since we graduated from a state university, Jane said, as if revealing a great secret. Hearing this, I was taken aback. It made sense why Jane would be embarrassed if this was her family. Laughing together, Jane and Scott continued their tour of the house, even opening the door to my room. Jane looked around my room with a look of disgust and said, what's the point of hoarding all these comic books? It's creepy. Are you still into that nerdy stuff? The walls of my room are lined with comic books because I'm a comic book artist. I dropped out of high school to devote myself fully to my work. Jane, who has always been dismissive of subcultures like mine, couldn't understand my passion, just as I can't fathom her heavy mascara. Well, I'm a comic book artist. These are my references, I explained. Oh, you're probably not even a successful comic book artist, are you? You're still mooching off mom and dad. It's disgraceful. Just get out, Jane said dismissively. Taken aback, I replied, What? Just get out. Scott and I are going to be living here from now on, Jane declared. What? Jane, I had no idea about this. My mother and father exclaimed in shock. Jane ignored their surprise, laughing derisively. Scott and I will take care of mom and dad. You're no longer needed here, so just leave. Aren't you embarrassed to still be depending on them? Not only are you ugly, but you're also stupid. As Jane spoke, Scott merely chuckled, clearly trying to contain his own irritation. I said, Fine. Jane and Scott's attitude not only infuriated my parents but made me furious as well. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I reluctantly agreed to Jane's demand. All right, I'll move out in a few days and you and Scott can move in. But just so you know, I won't be giving you any money. Sure. Bye, sis. Please move out as soon as you can, Jane replied with a smirk. After making their demands, Jane and Scott left, triumphantly telling my parents, Next time we come, it'll be to move in. My parents insisted, You don't need to move out. But I, now determined to get back at Jane and Scott, said, No, I'm moving out. I have somewhere else to go. I packed up and left promptly. Jane and Scott soon took over the family home. On the day I moved out, Jane called, Have you moved out yet? I answered with frustration, I'm on my way out now, so don't worry. Jane always maintained a polite demeanor with our parents, never showing them any of her true feelings, but she often belittled me. To them, Jane and I were both cherished daughters. They told Jane and Scott that it hurt to hear them speak poorly of me, but it seemed the two of them ignored their comments. A month later, just as I had anticipated, Jane called. When I saw her name on the caller ID, I braced myself. Nearly in tears, Jane said, Emma, the property management company called and said they haven't received the rent. What's going on? They even said if I don't pay soon, they'll evict me. Why would I pay the rent? I don't live there anymore. I heard from mom and dad that you were covering the rent to show your gratitude to them, right? Why did you stop? Like I said, I don't live there, so I'm not responsible for the rent. Just get the money together now. The utility bills are also incredibly high. Annoyed by Jane's continued demands, I hung up and called my boyfriend, Liam. Jane just called and asked me to come over. I'm heading to her parents' house now. Okay, I'll come with you. I'm worried about you, Emma, and I haven't seen your parents in a while, Liam said. The reason I had a place to go right after leaving my parents' home was that Liam had offered me a room, as we were discussing the possibility of marriage. This past month had been a valuable period for us to adjust. When we arrived at my parents' house, Jane met us at the door, her face flushed with anger. Did you bring the money? You need to pay up to show some gratitude to our parents. Do you think I'm struggling to make ends meet as a cartoonist? How do you expect me to cover the rent for such an expensive apartment? I replied, Well, you managed to pay before, didn't you? Just cover the rent and utility bills, Jane insisted. I won't. Jane and Scott, you both have respectable jobs, right? Why can't you handle your own rent? I asked. Jane was momentarily speechless. I began to suspect that Jane and Scott might be financially strained. Jane was dressed in high-end brands from head to toe, and Scott sported a luxury watch and designer clothes. Could it be that Jane and Scott can't pay the rent rather than simply refusing to? You claimed you wanted to take care of Mom and Dad, but I've heard you've left all the housework to them. Aren't you and Scott just living off them? Jane, clearly caught off guard, bit her lip. Scott, who had been avoiding eye contact with me and focusing solely on Liam, finally spoke up with a shaky voice. Why is Liam here? Liam? I asked, feeling surprise. Jane looked puzzled, and Liam, who had been watching the argument with concern, stepped forward with a friendly smile and introduced himself. Hello there. I see you're aware that I'm dating Emma with plans to marry her, Liam said smoothly. What? Emma and Liam are dating? Who the heck is this Liam guy? Jane exclaimed, clearly surprised. Scott, looking flustered, turned to Jane. Don't you know? He's a voice actor from a popular anime that everyone's been talking about. You must have seen him on TV. What? Why is my sister dating someone like that? It's because Emma is the creator of the original story for that influential anime, Liam explained. Jane's face went pale as the realization hit her. I had a series published in a boys' magazine, which had become a major cultural phenomenon. Even Jane, who wasn't familiar with comics, recognized the title and seemed to regret underestimating me now that she knew I was successful. Seeing Jane's sudden shift in attitude, I sighed and said, If you can't pay, then leave right now. I'll be expecting the rent for this month from you later. Don't say that. Scott and I got caught up in gambling and lost a lot of money, Jane admitted reluctantly. It turned out that Jane and Scott had become heavily involved in slot machines and had squandered a significant amount of their funds. Their decision to move in with our parents was driven by their financial troubles. They had even borrowed money from dubious sources, leaving most of their salaries to pay off the debt. I have no intention of helping Jane, especially given how she's always mocked me. Since our parents are moving again, you and Scott should leave immediately. Why are Mom and Dad moving? Are you trying to keep them from coming to their aid? I couldn't help but worry that Jane, burdened by debt, might cause problems for our parents. If you don't leave promptly, I'll charge you for the second month's rent as well. Jane and Scott reluctantly agreed, and the meeting ended. Later, when my parents, who had been out, heard about the situation, they called Liam to apologize. Liam, however, remained calm. It might be best to avoid Jane for a while, he suggested. And we should find a new place for my parents to move to. I quickly bought a new apartment, and my parents prepared to relocate once more. I'm sorry for the trouble, my parents said, and I responded, it's only right to repay you for supporting me when I made the drastic decision to leave high school. I am where I am today because of you. My parents were moved to tears by my words. Jane and Scott continued to struggle with their debt, but I had no obligation to show mercy. I insisted on full payment for the rent and utilities I had covered. When they didn't respond to my calls, I contacted their workplace directly and eventually received the payment. This, however, led to their financial troubles becoming public knowledge at their company. Jane and Scott, unable to quit their jobs due to their financial situation, continued to work under uncomfortable circumstances. Afterwards, I married Liam. Our parents gave us their blessing, and we've been happily building our life together. Although I've cut ties with Jane and Scott, I still hope they manage to find their way and live strong. Hey, where are you right now? I'm at work, my husband said calmly over the phone, his tone unwavering. He's lying. You're right here in front of me. To deceive me so easily. Well, I have my own plans now. I'll make sure you regret this. I'm Karen, 33 years old. After college, I landed a job at a multinational corporation. My dream job. The pay is good, but the work is demanding with frequent international business trips. At this rate, my job might become my lifelong companion. When I was 29, feeling anxious about the future, I attended a mixer at a friend's invitation. That's where I met my husband, Mike. Mike is the same age as me and works a steady 9-to-5 job. Unlike me, he doesn't travel or relocate, which means I end up earning more. When the prospect of marriage began to seem real, he hesitated, asking, Karen, do you really think I can make you happy with things as they are? Why would you doubt that? Because I earn more. It's just, I don't mind at all. I'm with you because I love you, Mike. I feel the same way, but are you sure you're okay with me? His uncertain look was endearing. I met his gaze and spoke from the heart. I want you, Mike. It's you I love, not anyone else. Karen, thank you. I want to be with you too. A month later, he proposed. That fall, we had a beautiful chapel wedding surrounded by friends and family. Despite my busy schedule, I was incredibly happy enough to overlook any hardships. Nearly 2 years have passed since then, and our life together has been blissfully smooth. With our age, it was time to start thinking about having children. That's what I was starting to consider. One day, I came home from work to find Mike, who should have been home before me, missing. Mike, I called out, searching through the rooms, but he was nowhere to be found. Noticing his shoes were missing by the front door, I checked my phone for messages or missed calls. There were none. What's going on? He always comes home before me. If something had happened, he would have at least sent a message, right? Did something happen to Mike? With growing concern, I dialed his number, praying for the best. The phone rang 3 times before his familiar, carefree voice answered. Hello. Mike, are you okay? Okay? What's going on? I just got home from work and you weren't here. There were no messages, so I was worried. Are you alright? Oh, sorry, I'm working overtime today. Overtime? You've never done that before, have you? I asked, puzzled. Mike hesitated, then said quickly, actually, I get assigned a big project. If I do well, I might get a promotion. That's why I need to put in extra hours. A promotion? That's fantastic. Yeah, so I'll probably be working late more often. But don't worry about me. See you later. Wait. Hold on, Mike. But he hung up before I could say more. Despite his abruptness, I felt a surge of happiness. Mike finally has a chance for a promotion. He's always been worried about the difference in our incomes, so this could boost his confidence. I don't mind his current salary, but a higher income would certainly make our lives more comfortable, especially with the prospect of children in the future. A promotion for him would be a great development. Since that day, Mike stopped coming home at his usual time. His days off turned into work days and our time together diminished. When I returned from work, he wasn't there. Even on his rare days off, he was absent. This loneliness was more profound than I had anticipated. Although I wished he'd come home early occasionally or spend his days off relaxing together, I didn't want to burden him with my feelings. Confronting him seemed impossible, so I buried myself in work to distract from the emptiness. With an overseas business trip coming up, I worked even harder, mirroring his extended hours. But as our time together shrank, my heart grew heavier. I couldn't endure it any longer, despite knowing it might add to the stress. I decided it was time to share my feelings. Welcome home, Mike. I need to talk to you, I said when he walked in that night. Talk? Does it have to be today? I'm really tired. Ha! I was caught off guard but didn't want to give up. I'm sorry, but it's important. If you have something to say, make it quick. I need to get to bed early for tomorrow's work. But tomorrow is Saturday. Aren't you taking the day off? I urged, hoping he'd relax at home. Enough already, you're nagging. Can't you see how busy I am? Is it fun for you to bother me? That's not what I meant. Please just stop. Do you not understand how critical this period is for me? Yes, I understand. I'm sorry. His anger, which I had never seen before, shocked me. I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed, he said sharply and left the room. Alone, I trembled with fear. What just happened? I've never seen Mike like this. I understand he's busy, but there was no need for him to speak to me like that. Although my frustration was growing, I couldn't voice it. We usually resolve issues through conversation, but I was too afraid to express my feelings at that moment. As my overseas business trip approached, I had been working late nights. On this particular evening, I left work unusually late and rushed to the train station, only to find the train delayed. The thought crossed my mind that Mike might have gotten home before me, so I decided to hail a taxi. Excuse me, could you take me to this address? I handed the driver my apartment's address, and the car set off. During the ride, I was too exhausted to check my phone, instead staring vacantly out the window. Suddenly, I shouted, "Stop! Stop the car, please." I blinked and refocused on the scene outside. There across the pedestrian walkway was Mike walking with a woman I didn't recognize. This can't be happening. Mike, why? You were supposed to be busy with work. What's going on? Questions raced through my mind as I tried to process what I was seeing. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, but everything matched. His clothes, his height. They were clearly kissing on the sidewalk. My phone was out in an instant, capturing video evidence of his betrayal. They continued walking, arm in arm. As I filmed, the driver's voice interrupted. "Ma'am?" I snapped back to reality and quickly stopped recording. When I arrived home, Mike wasn't there yet. I called him, desperate for answers. The call rang on my phone, but he didn't pick up. After several attempts, he finally answered. "Stop calling me repeatedly. You know I can't answer if I'm not picking up." "I'm sorry, but I need to ask you something," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm working overtime. I'm sorry, but can we talk later?" Mike's voice sounded strained. "Overtime? You're not talking about cheating, are you?" "What?" There was a brief pause before his anger flared. After a moment, he sighed heavily. "Enough with this. How can you accuse me when I'm tired from working hard? Forget it. I'm not coming home tonight." He hung up abruptly. His reaction seemed to confirm my suspicions. I felt a strange mix of emotions, neither pure anger nor sadness. So, he really is cheating on me. We need to talk about this. Things can't go on like this. True to his word, Mike didn't come home that night. From then on, he would come home but avoided any meaningful conversation. Finally, the day of my business trip arrived. This time, it's a 2-week trip overseas. On the morning of my departure, Mike initiated a conversation. "Karen, you're leaving for your business trip today, right? Be careful." "Huh? Oh yes, thank you. 2 weeks is such a long time. I know you go on trips often, but I still find it hard to get used to it. It feels lonely." "Lonely? Do you really feel that way?" "Of course. We've been so awkward lately. I want to clear up our misunderstandings. Let's have a nice dinner when I get back." There's no way things will work out so conveniently, I thought, feeling a pang of disbelief. It seemed like a cover-up for his infidelity. Still, part of me chose to believe his words. At the time, I hadn't fully realized that my feelings for him had cooled off due to our strained relationship. Yet I couldn't truly hate him. Was I mistaken about what I saw? His smile, which I hadn't seen in a long time, was unexpectedly endearing. I told him, "Let's have a proper talk when I get back," and left for my trip. After finishing my business trip earlier than expected, I decided to surprise Mike by returning home without telling him. I planned to cook dinner and wait for him as a pleasant surprise. I landed in New York around 11 a.m. and headed straight home. Arriving around 1 p.m., I was relieved to finally be back. But the moment I opened the door, a chill ran down my spine. What? What is this? A pair of light pink pumps were conspicuously placed at the entrance. Frozen with shock, I heard voices coming from the living room, Mike's and a woman's. I crept down the hallway, peeking around the corner into the living room. There they were in their underwear, drinking. The woman was the same one I had seen with Mike before. The woman spoke in a sweet tone. "Hey Mike, are you really okay with having me over? Isn't it risky if your wife finds out?" "It's fine," Mike replied casually. "She's on a business trip abroad until the day after tomorrow." "Really? That's perfect. It's my birthday, and your wife isn't home." "Exactly. Thanks to that, we can spend time together at home." "Linda, you're staying over tonight, right?" "Oh, Mike, thank you for the gift." So Mike's mistress is named Linda. They embrace each other drunkenly. This couldn't be real. Just because I earn more, he's having an affair in the apartment I rent under my name? Nausea surged through me as I recorded the entire scene with my phone. Once I had enough evidence, I quietly retreated to the entrance and left the apartment. Sweat dripped down my face and my heart raced. Despite everything, a part of me still wanted to believe it wasn't true. The scene replayed in my mind, and I knew I couldn't continue as his wife. With no other options left, I called Mike, bracing myself for what was to come. When Mike answered my call with a casual, "Hello," I made sure to infuse my voice with urgency. "Hey, where are you right now?" "Huh? I'm at work, of course. What time do you think it is?" Yeah, I guess so. I'm sorry, but it seems like someone else is in the apartment right now." Mike's voice faltered, confusion evident as he stammered, "What? What do you mean?" I decided to weave a bit of deception into my response, aiming to catch him off guard. "Well, my trip finished early, so I came back home. When I got to the front door, I heard someone talking inside." "You're saying you're outside our apartment right now?" "Yes, that's right." "Mike, what should I do? Should I go inside and check?" I hoped to trap him into revealing the truth about the affair. I wanted to see if he'd admit it or at least act honestly. Instead, his response shattered my expectations. In a loud, panicked voice, he said, Could it be a burglar? Get out of there right now. Leave the place immediately. In that moment, all remaining affection I had for him evaporated. So this is how easily he betrays me. Instead of facing the truth or apologizing, he chose to deny and deflect in such a pathetic manner. For now, just get to somewhere safe, Mike insisted before abruptly hanging up. Moments later, I called the police. Hello, this is the police. I think there might be a burglar in my apartment. I can hear unfamiliar voices. Thank you for the information. After ending the call, I waited anxiously. A few minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. I explained the situation to them, and we headed to my apartment. When one of the officers rang the doorbell, Mike appeared, his eyes wide with surprise. Why are the police here? He asked. Are you the resident of this house? One officer inquired. Yes, I am. We received a report from your wife about a possible burglary. A burglary? No, there's no one here. As he spoke, I stepped out from behind the door. Seeing me, Mike's face fell, and he muttered, Well, why are you here? His eyes darted nervously around. I apologized to the officers, claiming it must have been a misunderstanding, and sent them on their way. Inside, I saw no sign of his mistress. It seemed he must have hidden her when I called. Did he really think I was still unaware of the affair? He confronted me with frustration. Why did you call the police? That was so unnecessary. Well, Mike, you were the one who said there was a burglar. Also, weren't you supposed to be at work? Why are you home? That is. Never mind. Just look at this. I pulled out my phone and showed him the video. His face drained of color as he watched. This isn't what it looks like, Karen. Are you really trying to make excuses now? Sweat began to bead on his forehead. He seemed desperate to find words, but no apology emerged. I'd had enough. I coldly said, Oh, just drop it. It's clear you're a jerk who can't even apologize in this situation. How does it feel to lie, cheat, and get caught? Surely you didn't think I wouldn't find out. Wait, Karen, I understand. I'll apologize. Your apologies mean nothing to me now, I told Mike coldly. In fact, they're worth less than nothing. Even if you apologize, I will never forgive you. I'm going to sue you and that woman for emotional distress. I hope you both rot in hell. Fueled by anger, I forced Mike out of the house and locked the door behind him. He made a commotion outside for a while, but when I continued to ignore him, he eventually left. Later, I received a call from my in-laws who informed me that Mike had come to them, claiming he had nowhere else to go. I explained the situation, and they were outraged. They had Mike sign and mail the divorce papers, which meant the divorce was finalized smoothly. The following day, I notified my in-laws that the papers had been accepted. They promptly kicked Mike out and severed ties with him. I pursued a claim for emotional distress against both Mike and his mistress through my lawyer, demanding a lump sum payment. The other woman, Linda, turned out to be a receptionist at Mike's company. Their affair quickly became public within the workplace. Unable to handle the scandal, Linda abruptly left the company. As for Mike, he now endures the scorn of his colleagues while trying to navigate his work environment. I later discovered that his promotion was a fabrication, a ploy to cover up the affair. I felt foolish for being deceived, but at least I had the clarity to make the decision to divorce. Moving forward, I'm committed to dedicating even more energy to my career and striving for higher positions. I'm determined to show that happiness and fulfillment are not tied to marriage, and I'm ready to achieve it on my own terms.
I was jolted by the news that my husband had been rushed to the hospital. As I burst into the treatment room, the gaze of the doctors, nurses, and my husband all converged on me. The sudden silence was almost palpable, but when our eyes met, I was relieved to see that he was stable and not in immediate danger. However, what happened next was astonishing. My name is Tanya. I'm a 30-year-old nurse, and my husband, Steve, who is 2 years older than me, works for the government. What drew me to Steve was his seriousness, a stark contrast to my previous boyfriends. Perhaps it's my nature as a nurse or my inclination to care for others, but I find fulfillment in helping people, whether it's lending money or offering support. It's something I've always done without much hesitation, even though I knew I probably shouldn't. Many of my nursing colleagues share this trait, and relationships often come up in our conversations. Then came a pivotal moment in my life. I met Steve on a blind date arranged by some fellow nurses. His quiet demeanor and serious nature intrigued me, and I felt an immediate attraction. While others found him too serious or unremarkable, I was drawn to him. I took the initiative to exchange contact details and asked him out. Our relationship flourished over 3 years, marked by harmony and trust. Unlike many relationships that fizzle up quickly, ours was strong and enduring. When I suggested we get married, Steve proposed, and we tied the knot. Steve, with his limited dating experience, preferred reading and gaming at home over socializing. Though he rarely ventured out, his love for books made for endless conversations, and his reserved nature only added to his charm. Steve isn't much of an outdoors person, but he seems to have a thriving online social life through gaming. We often play games together while chatting online. Since we started dating, Steve has mentioned that he's had more opportunities to go out. He's found that having someone to accompany him makes the experience more enjoyable, even though he was initially reluctant because he didn't have anyone to go with. My in-laws live about 2 hours away. They seemed like kind people, but since Steve is the youngest of 3 siblings and his parents are quite elderly, we don't visit them often. After meeting them at our wedding, we've only seen them once more. During the new year, we exchange gifts at mid-year and year-end, and I try to call them, but my night shift work makes it difficult to find a good time to chat. Steve and I make the most of our time off together and share household responsibilities. I thought everything was going well. However, about 3 months ago, I noticed a shift in Steve. One evening, I came home to find him asleep on the sofa with a beer can on the table. "You'll catch a cold sleeping here," I said, waking him up. He groggily rubbed his eyes. "Isn't it unusual for you to be drinking beer and sleeping here?" I asked. "I was at an online drinking party with my gaming friends. I got carried away and drank too much," he explained. Though I didn't quite understand his online world, I was willing to let it slide as long as he was enjoying himself. But this was a mistake. Similar incidents followed, and then I noticed something else. Steve's hair had changed. "What's going on with your hair?" I asked, surprised to see it dyed brown and styled in a way he'd never done before. "Is this acceptable for your job?" I questioned, remembering he had mentioned strict regulations at his government job. "What's wrong with it? I decided to start enjoying myself more while I'm still young. Do you like it?" Steve's sudden change was surprising, especially since he wasn't the type to focus on fashion. "I'm not sure if it suits you," I said honestly. It wasn't that I disliked the change, but I wasn't used to it and wasn't sure it suited him. I see," was all I managed to say. A few days later, Steve got his ears pierced. I wasn't sure if it suited him. It almost seemed like he was going through a midlife crisis. I wondered if he might be struggling with something else, perhaps related to his jaw. "Hi, what's going on with you lately?" I finally asked, unable to hold back any longer. He gave me a vague response. "Nothing." Then he retreated to the bedroom. I knew this situation couldn't continue, but with the recent retirement of a colleague, my workload had increased significantly, leaving me little time to focus on Steve. Around the same time, Steve mentioned, "My dad hasn't been feeling well, so I'm going home for the weekend to check on him." Given that my father-in-law is elderly, I understood Steve's concern and agreed. From then on, Steve began leaving every weekend. I tried to show my support by cooking for him and sending texts while I was at work, but his responses were sparse. Just as I was planning to discuss things with him, I received an unexpected call at work. "Tanya, the police need to speak with you," a colleague said, handing me the phone. "Police? Why?" I asked, my heart racing. The officers informed me that Steve had been in an accident and was being rushed to the emergency room. "What? Is he okay?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The officers reassured me that while Steve's injuries were serious, they were not life-threatening, and he had been taken to the hospital where I worked. I hurried to the emergency ward, found the nurse, and rushed to the treatment room. When I opened the door, everyone in the room looked up at me. "Excuse me," I heard my husband was brought in. The doctor's expression was serious, and the nurse seemed troubled. I felt a pang of anxiety, but when I saw Steve's face, I felt a wave of relief. The nurse briefed me on his condition. He had a severe leg injury, and they had to cut off his pants to treat him. As I looked at Steve again, I saw his pants had already been removed, and the medical team was working on him. As I stood there, my husband suddenly yelled, "Tanya, don't look at me." What? I was taken aback. As a nurse, seeing injuries is part of my job, and I found it odd that he'd be embarrassed about his pants being cut off due to his injury. It's standard procedure when clothing can't be removed normally. "Just leave," he shouted again, but I was frozen, unsure of what was happening. Despite his shouting, the doctors and nurses continued their work with urgency. They couldn't afford to delay the treatment by responding to every request or concern. Then something caught my eye. "What is that?" I murmured to myself. On the inside of Steve's right thigh was a tattoo. The injury they were treating was on his left leg, but the tattoo on his right leg was clearly visible. Fortunately, the right leg seemed undamaged, so my attention was drawn to the injury on his left leg. The tattoo featured a name, apparently a woman's name. "What's this about?" I wondered aloud. I could see Steve was disturbed by my reaction, but I stepped aside as the medical team continued their work. I spoke with a fellow nurse in the emergency ward, who revealed that Steve had come in alone. She mentioned that he was brought in with a woman of similar age, who had been in the accident with him. Her name was Yasmin. The name matched the one in the tattoo. Could this mean Steve was having an affair? I couldn't stop questioning everything. My coworker described the woman as having brown hair, pierced ears, and a tattoo of Steve's name. It didn't add up. I spoke to the nurse who treated the woman, and she confirmed that Steve's name was indeed tattooed on the woman's inner thigh. It seemed clear now they were having an affair. I found it shocking that someone would have a cheating partner's name permanently inked on their body. It struck me as a sign of instability. As these thoughts raced through my mind, I remembered the call from the police. They had first contacted my in-laws, but since they couldn't drive, they were given my contact information and called me directly. I decided to check in with my in-laws. When my father-in-law answered, I asked, "Is Steve going to be okay?" I reassured him that Steve had been in an accident, but was stable and receiving treatment. My father-in-law's voice clearly showed relief. So I asked, "By the way, Dad, have you been feeling better?" My father-in-law seemed puzzled. "What do you mean?" he asked. I explained. "Steve mentioned that you weren't feeling well, which is why he's been away every weekend. He said he was looking after you." To my surprise, my father-in-law was in good health and there were no recent issues. It turned out Steve's claims were false, but where had he been going if not to his parents' house? If it wasn't visiting them, it must have been to meet his mistress. Yet, I had no concrete proof. After finishing my shift, I went home, leaving Steve at the hospital where he was staying overnight. I decided to search through his belongings thoroughly. It didn't take long to uncover damning evidence, photos of him with a woman, hotel receipts, and an email confirmation for a romantic resort reservation. It became clear that their accident occurred on their way back from this resort. The crash happened on a mountain road. Unfortunately, neither Steve nor Yasmin was in critical condition. Still, with Steve's leg injury, it was a situation where, as his wife, I should have been concerned about his well-being. I no longer felt any sense of empathy. The realization that Steve had lied about visiting his parents to cover up an affair with another woman was a harsh blow. I began to wonder if his recent odd behavior, dyeing his hair and getting his ears pierced, was influenced by this woman. I confided in a fellow nurse, who referred me to a divorce attorney known for handling such cases. The next day, I brought Steve's belongings to his hospital room. He appeared disoriented and couldn't recall the events from the previous day's treatment. To be honest, I had lost interest in the details of his accident. I left the hospital without speaking to him, as I had a shift to attend. After work, I met with my lawyer and explained the situation. With the evidence I had gathered, he had assured me that I had a strong case for divorce. I was determined to end the marriage as quickly as possible. I couldn't bear the thought of sharing a space with Steve again after such betrayal. My anger had eclipsed any sadness I felt. I found a new place to live and moved out, leaving only Steve's belongings behind. I planned to wait until he was discharged from the hospital before finalizing the divorce. Although I considered filing for divorce while he was still in the hospital, I decided against it to avoid complications at the facility where I worked. When Steve was ready to leave the hospital, I drove to pick him up. I need to make a quick stop, Please come with me, I said. He looked at me with confusion, but agreed to follow. We went to a family restaurant near our house, where the lawyer was waiting for us. Steve, still adjusting to standing on his injured leg, looked bewildered by the situation, but I was focused on the task at hand. Steve Saturday down silently, and I thrust the divorce papers toward him. Divorce? Why? He shouted, his voice etched with panic. I took a moment to compose myself, my anger barely contained. Why? You had an affair. You even had your accident on a romantic trip. I found evidence of your infidelity in our home. And on top of that, you lied about your father's health to cover up your trips to see this woman. Steve's face went ashen. You think I'm naive? Yasmin, the woman you were involved with, has been discharged from the hospital. Her injuries were less severe than yours. I can't believe she was brought to the same hospital where I work, I said with a bitter smile, watching as his color drained further. You'll be held accountable for the pain you've caused me. I handed him the divorce papers and a pen, but he didn't take the pen. Is it just your leg that's injured, or have you lost the use of your hand as well? I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. Eventually, he picked up the pen but hesitated, staring blankly at the paper. Why are you hesitating? Afraid of facing the consequences of your actions? Do you think this is a game? Steve seemed taken aback, as if my words had struck a nerve. I glared at him coldly. Are you kidding? I can't stay married to someone who has their mistress' name tattooed on their body. His eyes widened in confusion. What? What are you talking about? You really don't remember, I retorted. I saw the tattoo on your inner thigh when you were rushed to the emergency room. You were yelling at me not to look. But seriously, what kind of man tattoos his mistress' name on himself? Even if we didn't get divorced, did you think you could hide this from me? I said, watching my husband's jaw drop in shock. That's not it, he stammered, trying to defend himself. I sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief. Dyed hair, pierced ears, and a tattoo with the name of the woman you cheated on me with. At least have the decency to get these after our divorce. During his hospital stay, I unexpectedly came face to face with Yasmin. It wasn't intentional, we simply crossed paths. She was wandering around, looking for the gift shop, and asked me for directions. The gift shop is just around the corner, I said. Enter Yasmin. Right, my husband is Steve, I added, noting her reaction as she read my nameplate. Her face turned pale, and she fled at an astonishing speed for someone with injuries. Please don't run in the hospital, I called after her. It seemed she was more embarrassed than I was. She must have heard from Steve that I worked here, but hadn't expected to encounter me in such a large hospital. It was almost ironic. My husband claimed he wanted to start over with me rather than with someone he supposedly loved enough to get a tattoo of. I asked Steve directly if Yasmin had left him. He seemed to believe I'd never find out, and apparently preferred to endure our marriage rather than face the possibility of alimony. It's hard to believe he thought he could keep this hidden with her name tattooed on him. Ending our marriage wouldn't erase the fact that he had betrayed me. While it's common for nurses to attract problematic men, I had hoped Steve, with his serious demeanor, would be different. His decision to get a tattoo of the woman he cheated on me with was the ultimate betrayal. I feel foolish for not seeing it sooner. And now, I'll leave the rest to the attorneys and hope to never see him again. The lawyer gave me a nod and said, I've moved out, so you'll need to find your own way home. Goodbye. My husband looked at me with a pained expression, his mouth hanging open. He would likely be struggling with his leg injury for a while, but it felt like justice. The divorce proceeded smoothly, and I received alimony, which left Steve financially devastated. To his further dismay, Steve discovered that Yasmin was married to a colleague of his, someone he had randomly encountered through online gaming. Her husband also filed for alimony. Adding to Steve's woes, I heard that Steve ended up quitting his job, and the gossip about his downfall kept spreading. As for me, I received my alimony and remained indifferent to Steve's job situation. After the divorce was finalized, my former in-laws reached out, clearly upset. After I explained everything, they apologized and assured me they would never let Steve harm me again. Word of the situation spread among my fellow nurses, and they mostly found it amusing. I couldn't help but laugh along with them. And now, I live on my own, free to enjoy life as I please.
My name is Jay Lenny, and I live with my husband, Theodore. Together, we run a set meal restaurant called Sunflower, a beloved establishment my grandfather had lovingly maintained for years. Sunflower has many regulars from the local area who have cherished it for a long time. Despite battling cancer, my grandfather remained the energetic owner, always insisting, "I can't just sit around in a hospital room. I'll work at Sunflower until the end." Even as his condition worsened, he never complained, serving delicious food with a smile and chatting with regular customers. Today, surrounded by his family, he breathed his last breath. My grandfather named me, his granddaughter, as his successor for the restaurant, perhaps sensing his time was near. He left a detailed will with instructions about the inheritance of the shop. Accepting my grandfather's wishes, I decided to become the owner of Sunflower. Thankfully, the customers continued to come even after his passing, and our loyal employees remained dedicated. Having watched my grandfather cook all my life, I felt confident I could continue serving dishes that tasted just like his. Cooking with all my heart to keep the restaurant going, I received positive feedback from regular customers who appreciated the familiar flavors. "This taste, it's just like your granddad's. It feels like he's still here, even though he's gone," they would say. Sunflower has been thriving just like when my grandfather was around, and I'm more motivated than ever. However, since my grandfather passed away, my husband has started to show dissatisfaction. "Normally, a man would be the owner of a restaurant. I don't get why you inherited it," he said. "I'm his granddaughter. That's why the restaurant is in my name. But we're running it together, so it doesn't really matter, does it?" I replied. "Well, I guess," he conceded. My husband seemed to have wanted to be the owner and sometimes vented his frustrations. But I am the one who mainly cooks. Since my grandfather's time, my husband has primarily handled the cash register, deliveries, and shopping. An owner who can't cook doesn't quite fit the bill. I could have given in a little and not been so stubborn, but my grandfather had nominated me. Once nominated, I didn't want to disregard his wishes. "Giovanni, can I have another one of these?" "Sure, got it." The restaurant is still bustling, and I'm busy every day. Then one day, someone unexpected paid a visit. "Hey, big bro, long time no see." It was my husband's younger brother, a troublesome character. Despite his age, he never held a steady job and was always flitting about, playing around. He had moved far away last year, claiming he was going to find work, but it seems he quit that job and came back. "Oh, welcome back," I said, masking my discomfort. Despite his brother's unreliability, my husband cherished him and seemed glad he had returned to our hometown. "I heard the old man passed away. You took over the shop, right, bro?" "No, not me," my husband replied. "No way, your wife." "Seriously, a woman running a shop? That's hilarious." Ignoring the annoyed looks from the customers, my brother-in-law roared with laughter. I felt really annoyed and decided to ignore him. "Since we're family, it's free, right?" "Yeah, sure," my husband responded. My brother-in-law ate a large meal, drank beer, and left without paying. Our other relatives always paid when they visited, so it felt unfair to make an exception for him. "It's fine, he doesn't have money. It's okay to give him a break," my husband said, siding with his brother to the end. After that, my brother-in-law regularly visited the restaurant and ate and drank without paying. Each time, I warned my husband, but he wouldn't listen. As our relationship worsened, my brother-in-law started coming to the restaurant more frequently, often whispering with my husband in the back of the kitchen. I was sure they were bad-mouthing me. Despite their behavior, I tried not to mind and kept cooking. While glancing at me working hard, my brother-in-law spoke with my husband. "Can't we somehow make this restaurant yours, bro? The name is in your wife's name, but the location is good and there are many customers. Let's make it your restaurant and monopolize the profit. It must be hard being under your wife's thumb like this." "Well, yeah, but..." My brother-in-law had set his sights on Sunflower and was scheming to make it their own. Taking advantage of our marital strife, he was trying to get my frustrated husband on board. "But how are we going to make it our restaurant?" my husband asked. "I have a good idea," his brother replied. The two began to quietly plot. My husband agreed with his brother's opinion, and they decided to put their plan into action. The next day was the restaurant's day off. My husband left early, leaving me alone. Even though it was my day off, I remembered that the kitchen was dirty. I decided to visit the restaurant and spend the whole day cleaning. When I tried to open the door of the shop, it was unlocked. Thinking I'd forgotten to lock it yesterday, I rushed in, and there were my husband and brother-in-law. "Oh, you're here." I was surprised because the door was unlocked. I said, "It's our day off today. What are you doing?" My husband responded, smirking. "I came to clean." "What are you two doing here?" I asked, suspicious. "Actually, we have something to talk to you about. Since you took over this restaurant, you've been getting too big for your boots, and it's bothering us," my husband said. "I'm not getting big-headed," I retorted. "No, you are. Don't you think so?" he said, turning to his brother. "I do. You're happy because the restaurant's thriving and profitable," his brother chimed in. "What are you trying to say?" I asked, feeling my frustration rise. The two of them spoke as if they were mocking me, which frustrated me. As I showed my angry expression, my husband started to spread out some documents on the table. "I'm tired of your attitude. Let's get a divorce." The document he handed me was a filled-out divorce application. I was stunned by the sudden announcement. "Huh? What? What do you mean?" I was shaken, struggling to understand what my husband was thinking. The first thing that crossed my mind was the future of the restaurant. There are a few employees, but running the restaurant alone after the divorce would be extremely challenging. "This is too sudden. I don't understand what you're saying. It would be hard for me to keep running the restaurant alone if we divorce." "Well, that's why we're planning to buy this restaurant. We're going to start fresh with our own place, so we want you to leave." I couldn't make sense of what my husband was saying. It's a waste to continue running a simple diner in such a great location with so many customers. We plan to make the restaurant better. That's why you need to sign the divorce papers and leave quickly. Their demands were so absurd, I could hardly keep up. This restaurant was protected by my grandfather. The profits are already substantial. We should continue as we have been for the sake of the customers. "So, you have no intention of growing? A place like this will eventually go out of business. To prevent that, I'm saying we'll start a new restaurant." No matter what I said, I couldn't get through to them. It was clear my husband had been influenced by his brother. "Well then, we'll buy the restaurant for whatever price you want. We can earn it back quickly, so any price is fine." I was fed up with their bullying attitudes. "All right, if that's the case, I'll sell it for $50,000. Please wait for 2 weeks." While I prepared the divorce papers and the contract, I added, "During those 2 weeks, neither of you should come to the shop." As soon as I mentioned selling the shop, they were overjoyed. They were naively discussing their plans without understanding the full picture. Meanwhile, I managed to keep the shop running on my own. "Where's your husband?" one of the regulars asked. "Actually, we're getting a divorce," I replied. "What? So suddenly? Will you be running Sunflower alone then?" "No, my husband is buying the shop. I'll be leaving in 2 weeks." The customers were surprised and seemed genuinely disappointed. But there's some good news too. I quickly handed out flyers I had prepared. When they saw the flyers, their expressions immediately brightened. 2 weeks later, I brought the contract to sell the shop and the divorce papers. "Everything looks good, right?" I asked. My husband quickly signed the documents. $50,000, huh? I'll transfer the money to your account right away. "So, this is my shop now." He and his brother were ecstatic. As they celebrated, I packed up my belongings and left the shop. On my way to file the divorce papers, I felt a mix of excitement and curiosity about what they would do next. My ex-husband and brother-in-law immediately took over running the shop. We've briefed the employees. The shop should run smoothly even without Jaylani, my ex-husband assured. "Great, let's start making some money," his brother chimed in. With enthusiasm, they prepared for the day. However, when the clock struck 10, and the shop usually opened, a different scene unfolded. "Why aren't the customers coming?" my ex-husband exclaimed. There were no customers, and the employees who had always been punctual were missing. My ex-husband tried calling them, but no one answered. Panicking, he rushed outside and spotted a regular customer walking by. "Hey, you're one of our regulars, right?" he called out. "Yeah, that's me. I've been worried because you haven't come in yet. Please come on in." "Didn't you say Jaylani left? I came here for her cooking, so I'm not sure I'll keep coming." "Don't say that. We'll definitely serve something delicious." My ex-husband somewhat forcefully guided the customer to the shop. Reluctantly, the customer entered and began to look at the menu, ready to place an order. "What's with this menu?" the customer asked, eyeing the unfamiliar choices. "Since I'm the new owner, I've decided to make some drastic changes," my ex-husband replied. Gone were the traditional sunflower set meals. The new menu was filled with foreign names and unfamiliar dishes, making it difficult for customers to understand and reducing their enthusiasm even before they ordered. "I'll have this steak," the customer decided, pointing to a dish. "Got it," my ex-husband said, and he and his brother began cooking with enthusiasm. The customer, unfamiliar with my ex-husband's cooking, waited anxiously. "Hey, is it ready yet?" the customer asked after some time. "Sorry for the delay," my ex-husband responded. After a 40-minute wait, the steak was finally served. The customer's eyes widened in surprise at what was presented. What my ex-husband served could hardly be called a meal. The steak consisted of 3 pieces of meat, burnt on the outside and raw on the inside, with no sauce or garnishes. It was accompanied only by a bowl of bread and soup. We used high-quality ingredients, so we only seasoned it with salt and pepper. We wanted to highlight the aroma of the exterior and the rare interior, my ex-husband explained. The customer, dismayed by what looked like a failed dish, noticed that the soup appeared to be instant. "I'm sorry, but I can't eat this," the customer said, clearly dissatisfied. Disgruntled, the customer stood up and prepared to leave. My ex-husband was stunned, seeing that not a single bite had been taken. "Customer, you still need to pay. That'll be $30, my ex-husband said. $30? Are you kidding? I can't pay for this garbage-like meal," the customer retorted before storming out. Stunned by the unexpected turn of events, my ex-husband and his brother were left in shock. They quickly realized they were in a dire situation. Neither my ex-husband, who had barely cooked before, nor his freeloading brother was capable of running a restaurant. They should have seen it coming, but their focus on making money blinded them to the reality of running a successful business. From that point on, no customers visited Sunflower under their management. Meanwhile, I had opened a new restaurant in a different location, Sunflower 2. The original employees had joined me at this new place, which was also part of my grandfather's legacy. My grandfather had been concerned about the aging sunflower and its sustainability, so he had started building a new shop in a different location. He planned to unveil it once it was completed, but he passed away before that could happen. This new shop was entrusted to me, and I hadn't mentioned it to my ex-husband. During the 2 weeks I transitioned out of Sunflower, I promoted the new shop. Regular customers who missed my cooking followed me, ensuring a bustling opening day. With the $50,000 from my ex-husband, I had enough to hire a few part-time workers and boost their salaries. I introduced my original dishes, updated the menu for younger patrons, and even added weaning foods for children. This diversification attracted many families, and the shop thrived while preserving my grandfather's flavors and adapting to modern tastes. The daily hustle brought me a deep sense of fulfillment. Meanwhile, my ex-husband and his brother were struggling at the old Sunflower. They had borrowed a significant sum to pay me the $50,000, and now they were bombarded with demand letters. "What are we going to do about this?" my ex-husband asked, desperation evident in his voice. "You're the one who suggested this, so if you figure it out," his brother snapped, clearly frustrated. The brother-in-law, who had miscalculated the outcome, was wringing his hands in despair. Then he had a sudden idea. "I've got a plan," he said, a spark of hope in his eyes. With a scheme in mind, they showed up at my bustling restaurant during the busy lunch hour. "Jailani, please help us," the brother-in-law shouted over the crowd. Despite the restaurant being packed, he continued to call out. "My brother injured his arm and can't cook anymore. We're ready to give back the old restaurant. Could you also return the money? You took over the old restaurant and signed the contract. You need to take responsibility and make it work," I said firmly, trying to return to my work. Just then, my ex-husband appeared behind him, looking distressed. "Jailani, please help me," he pleaded. I was about to dismiss him as being overly dramatic when the noise in the restaurant grew louder. "Whoa, what's going on? That looks bad. Is he okay?" customers murmured, pointing towards my ex-husband. Looking over, I saw his fist was badly bruised, causing the stir among the patrons. "Are you really injured?" I asked, concern in my voice. "That's what I've been telling you," my ex-husband insisted. "Then go to the hospital right now," I said, immediately calling a taxi to take him there. During my lunch break, I went to the hospital to check on him. When I arrived, he was just coming out, apparently finished with his examination. As I approached to ask what had happened, he and his brother avoided my gaze and quickly left. Sensing something was off, I decided to inquire at the hospital reception. "Excuse me, I'm looking for a man named Theodore who was here earlier. Has his examination been completed? I came to pick him up." "Please wait a moment," the receptionist replied. After checking, the receptionist looked puzzled and said, "There's no record of a consultation under that name. He might have gone to a different hospital." Realizing my ex-husband hadn't actually been examined, and remembering their hasty exit, I suspected they were hiding something. I quickly set off to find them. A few minutes later, I spotted my ex-husband and his brother walking. I pulled over, got out of the car, and grabbed my ex-husband's arm. "I knew it," I exclaimed. Looking at the arm I had grabbed, I noticed the bruise was completely gone. My ex-husband and his brother tried to flee, but I used all my strength to stop them. Seeing my furious expression, they quickly calmed down. "Why is the bruise gone? You weren't injured after all." Running a restaurant is tough. The old sunflower barely gets any customers who are struggling to make money and repay the debt. I pretended to be injured to try to get some money back from you. "You were trying to deceive me with such a childish lie," I said, releasing them from my grip. "Don't involve me in your problems anymore. Figure out what to do with the restaurant yourselves." I climbed back into my car and drove away, heading back to my restaurant. Through the rearview mirror, I saw them standing with their heads hung low, which made me feel a mix of pity and frustration. Soon after, they put Sunflower up for sale, likely in a desperate attempt to repay their debt. However, the building's age made it hard to find a buyer. They were inundated with debt collection letters and worked tirelessly, a fitting consequence for their greed and mismanagement. Meanwhile, my newly renovated restaurant was thriving more than ever, with sales doubling. One of my regular customers even asked to apprentice with me, and now I have a promising disciple. I frequently remind him that running a restaurant is much more challenging than my ex-husband ever realized. I'm determined to honor my grandfather's legacy and continue growing the restaurant for years to come.
You're not coming to our wedding. If you do, it will be the end of our relationship. My eldest son, David, and his fiancée exchanged a nod, their resolve clear. My heart sank as I felt the weight of their disdain. What had I done to warrant such contempt? Had I simply been a devoted mother? What could possibly have caused them to resent me so deeply? Their rejection stung, but I couldn't identify any misstep on my part. I was also grappling with my anger towards David. After all the care and effort I put into raising him, how could he treat me this way? I couldn't fathom his behavior, and felt I needed to understand how wrong it was. Disrespect towards a mother, in my eyes, deserved consequences. My name is Mary, a 55-year-old housewife with 2 sons. David, our eldest, is a successful professional in Tokyo, while Tom, our younger son, prefers the steadiness of a local manufacturing job. In their younger years, the brothers were close. However, as they grew older, David began to resent Tom. He would humiliate and harass him publicly, and despite my reprimands, David's behavior never changed. Now, David is about to marry a woman from his company. She expressed a desire to meet us, so I arranged a dinner, hoping it would be a pleasant farewell. David preferred to keep Tom away, and Tom agreed it would be for the best. On the day of the meeting, we arrived at the restaurant, which was unfamiliar to us. Upon entering the private room, David and a strong-looking woman were already seated. "Hey, Mom and Dad, you're late." "I'm sorry, we got lost, since this is new to us." "Don't embarrass me." His words hurt, but David had always been this way, so I tried to brush it off. We took our seats and enjoyed the meal while David spoke about his fiancée. "She's incredibly attentive and thoughtful about our future. If I'd had someone like her earlier, I would have achieved even more. She's a perfectionist, excelling in everything she does. She's nothing like you two." David spoke with admiration for his fiancée, though it felt excessive. He seemed obsessed with her, and when I inquired about their meeting, he dismissed it as unimportant compared to her qualities. Even though it was our first time meeting, David's effort to make her look flawless made me uncomfortable. My husband was also uneasy, and I was relieved I hadn't brought Tom along. "I can repeat this as many times as needed. She's different from you. Please don't be unkind to her once we're married. Show her some respect." "I don't need you to tell me that. I wouldn't behave that way. Let's be honest, you've always prioritized Tom over me. Given that, I can't trust that you won't mistreat her." His words hit me hard. It seemed like David was speaking without any regard for the truth. We had been concerned about Tom's well-being because of David's relentless harassment. Tom had suffered from David's behavior since he was a child, and as a parent, it was natural to try to ease that suffering. When I questioned David about his actions, he simply replied, "I just didn't like Tom." That explanation was never satisfactory, and I had hoped for resolution, but David had twisted our concern for Tom into something it wasn't. I didn't want to escalate the situation, so I kept my objections to myself. The dinner ended on a strained note, but it was clear that underlying issues remained unresolved. "Don't worry about us getting older, we'll take care of you too," David said. He had already decided that he and his fiancée would move in with us after the wedding. It seemed his fiancée had agreed to this, saying, "You have another son who won't be dependent forever, right? I'll take care of him." This arrangement made me uneasy. Tom lives with us because he actively contributes to our household, not because he's coddled. In contrast, David and his fiancée have moved in without our consent, taking over our space and behaving as if they were the rightful owners. "Why don't you go weed the garden, Tom?" "Sorry, but I have to go to work." "You don't have a job, just do it yourself." "What? You're so arrogant." David's insistence on pushing Tom around had only grown stronger. I was impressed by Tom's patience, but the situation was becoming increasingly complicated. David and his fiancée seemed to be trying to force us out of our own home without any discussion. One night, after my husband and Tom had gone to bed, I went to the kitchen for some water and noticed the living room light was on. I heard David and his fiancée talking. "When will this house be ours?" "Just a little longer. We need to finalize everything so there are no interruptions. I plan to renovate once we get rid of the others. This place is too outdated." David chuckled. "I agree." I was shocked. I couldn't believe they were plotting to take over our home. I immediately told my husband and Tom. It was crucial that we act quickly to address the situation. Tom spoke up while we were still processing the shock. "Mom, I'll handle this. I have a strategy." Tom's words were reassuring, though his plan required patience. However, if his approach worked, it would ensure David and his fiancée would be out of our lives for good. My husband and I agreed to follow Tom's plan, hoping for a resolution. Despite the ongoing issues, life continued as usual, and David and his fiancée set their wedding date. They chose a lovely wedding hall nearby. Although we initially thought a countryside venue might not be ideal, the location they picked was quite impressive. "It's a bit pricey, but we can manage with the money we're making," David said with a grin. His smile irritated me, but I kept my frustration in check. David's constant jabs at Tom continued, but Tom's composed response made it less painful than it could have been. When the wedding date was confirmed, David and his fiancée invited us to meet with them. During this meeting, they delivered a shocking ultimatum. "Please don't come to our wedding. If you do, it will end our relationship." I was stunned. After regaining my composure, I asked David, "Are you sure? Why the sudden change?" "I'm afraid of you guys. I don't want you at my wedding." His fiancée began to fake cry, heightening my frustration. "I'm telling you again, if you come, our relationship is over. Isn't that what you want? Don't you think I'm a terrible son compared to my younger brother, who can do no wrong?" David pointed at Tom. Tom looked speechless. I lost my patience. "That's enough. David, you've been bullying Tom for years. Why are you behaving like this? You're siblings. Stop treating him this way." David and his fiancée turned their attention to me. "You have no right to criticize me. You've always been deceived by Tom's act and spoiled him. You've always treated me unfairly," David retorted. "That's because you've mistreated your brother. That's just an excuse. You couldn't resist because Tom was so cute." "That's not true." Despite my attempts to explain that I didn't favor Tom, David refused to listen. "Why won't he listen to me? His behavior is the cause of all this. Why can't he see that? David is my son, and even though he's been difficult, I felt a duty to look after him. But at this point, I've decided to step back." "All right then, I won't be attending the wedding." I declared that I was no longer concerned. Tom and my husband looked at me in surprise, but David and his fiancée seemed satisfied with my decision. "Are you really sure about this? You'll regret it." "No, we won't regret it. The best weddings are those without distractions." David and his fiancée celebrated their decision, but our hearts were heavy. We felt no need to attend a wedding where we weren't welcome. Ultimately, our family decided to forego the wedding. Without an invitation, we probably wouldn't have been allowed in anyway. David appeared satisfied with the outcome, unaware of the repercussions that would follow. I found it amusing to think about Tom's plan. The wedding passed without incident, but the newlyweds continued to stay at our house. They had recently changed jobs to be closer, which meant they were busy packing and settling into their new roles. On their first day after transferring offices, they came home and, in a state of panic, called Tom. "Tom, what's going on?" Confused, I asked them what had happened, and they gave me a brief explanation. At their new workplace, during the company tour, they unexpectedly encountered Tom, who was not supposed to be there. The boss conducting the tour greeted Tom with a deep bow and thanked him profusely, revealing that Tom was the president of one of their major clients. The couple, who had assumed Tom was merely a factory worker, were stunned by this revelation. In reality, Tom had worked diligently at the factory since it began. His hard work and innovative ideas had been instrumental in the factory's success. He had earned admiration from colleagues and contributed significantly to the factory's growth. The factory, under Tom's influence, became a key player relied upon by many companies. When the factory president fell ill, Tom frequently visited him to offer support. Impressed by Tom's dedication, the president appointed him as the next president. Although Tom initially hesitated, the president's insistence and the encouragement of those around him led Tom to accept the role. Under Tom's leadership, the factory continued to thrive, and Tom gained respect as a capable and trusted president. The factory's success grew, and Tom's reputation spread even to major companies in Tokyo. Today, Tom was at the company for a client meeting, but David and his wife, who had underestimated Tom's position, were unsettled by how he was treated. "Of course you cheated. You've always been like that," David accused, grabbing Tom. "If you had told us, we wouldn't have acted like this. Why didn't you say anything?" David's wife broke down in tears. Tom, unfazed, replied, "I reached this position through my own abilities. Why are you so upset?" David's anger flared, and he began to yell, "Don't act like that with me." Tom remained calm. "I want you to hear something important." We managed to calm David and his wife, getting them to sit down. Tom retrieved something from his room and returned to the table. "Music. First, take a look at this," Tom said, laying out several photographs that showed David's wife in compromising situations with another mom, evidence of her affair. David stared in shock, while his wife trembled. "I did some research on my future sister-in-law and found all this evidence. With this much proof, there's no way you can deny it," Tom said. David's wife lowered her head. "I'm sorry." David, stunned, could only gape. This is what happens when you don't focus on a person's character. No one is perfect. Tom's comment, though delivered with a hint of amusement, didn't lighten the mood. David collapsed in despair, while his wife continued to apologize. Ultimately, David and his wife divorced. David, unable to forgive the betrayal, was deeply affected. His wife, panicking at the alimony demand, used her parents' money to settle. Despite this, David remained deeply wounded. He quit his job, isolated himself in his room, and only emerged for meals. When Tom was around, David would shriek and retreat, clearly still fearful of him. The family had numerous discussions about what to do with David. Ultimately, everyone agreed that it was best to sever ties with him. While this decision weighed heavily on us, we could not overlook the selfishness he had shown. A few months later, David was asked to leave the house. In his final moments there, he pleaded for forgiveness, but by then, I had come to see him as no longer part of our family. It felt like a natural consequence of his actions. Now, the three of us are enjoying a peaceful life without any disruptions. My husband is retired, and thanks to Tom's success, we are financially secure. As I approach the later years of my life, I am focused on ensuring that Tom has a happy and fulfilling family life. He is getting married soon to his longtime fiancée, a fellow employee from his company. I am eagerly anticipating the wedding of my beloved son. You're worth less than dog food. Go on, admit it, Bo. I never thought I'd face such degradation. Despite our marriage being relatively new, I've tried to meet this woman's demands in my own way, but it seems it's all for nothing. She might as well be an alien. It would explain everything. I don't understand her language anymore, and I'm done trying. My name is Allison. At 32, I work in an office, influenced by my game-obsessed older brother. I've loved games since childhood, particularly role-playing games that transport me to fantastical worlds. Over the years, I've made many friends online, including my husband, Carmine. We bonded over our shared love for games, favorite characters, and spells. When a new game was released, we'd always buy it together. After years of this connection, our friendship turned into romance, and we decided to get married. Carmine's family consists of his father, Stanley, who is frequently away on solo assignments, and his mother, Bianca, a housewife. Stanley's job keeps him away from home most of the year. Carmine's grandmother, Stanley's mother, lives with them and has been battling Alzheimer's for several years. Her condition worsened recently, with her hearing declining, making conversations difficult. Her sudden forgetfulness when Stanley was away must have been a shock. Bianca has been caring for her since Carmine lived alone before our marriage. I sometimes wondered if I'd end up taking care of a stranger who isn't even my parents someday. Fortunately, both of Carmine's parents are healthy, so that seems far off. I was completely at ease until one fateful phone call. On my day off, after catching up on housework, I was engrossed in my favorite game when an unfamiliar sound disrupted me. Oh, it's a ringtone. I rarely receive calls, so I have forgotten my own ringtone. When I saw the caller I tensed up. It was Bianca. It was my first call from my mother-in-law, and although I was nervous, I answered quickly, fearing something might have happened. Hello. You're late. It's basic courtesy for an adult to answer promptly when a superior calls. The sarcasm in her voice made me want to hang up immediately, but I held back. I'm sorry. I'll be more prompt in the future. What do you need? As if you have anything better to do on your days off, playing that incomprehensible toy. You should be working to your duties as Carmine's wife. She instructed me to visit her home on my next day off and hung up. I was stunned, grappling with the unexpected sarcasm. I considered ignoring her request, but since she's Carmine's mother, I decided it might be best to at least listen to her. I reported the call to Carmine that night. I'm really sorry. It's probably going to be a hassle. You don't have to go. I found some comfort in Carmine's response, though it still frustrated me. There's a place I always go after work. Hello. Oh, Allison, what's wrong? Susan from the pottery school greeted me with her warm smile and those words. I usually start lightheartedly, but today, I was completely absorbed in my troubles. Susan, who is about the same age as my grandmother, but remains strong and attentive, has become a motherly figure to everyone. Pottery is enjoyable, but I come here mostly to talk to Susan. Listen to this. Susan, I got a rare call from Bianca, and it was nothing but a parade of sarcasm. She said, you must be free, or do your duty as a wife. I didn't expect to be told such outdated things. Susan listened attentively, her expression unchanged. Just ignore Bianca. There are still people with old-fashioned views around. Those who make such demands are often indulgent with themselves. My son's wife is just like that. I may not have Bianca's approval, but I'm surrounded by kind people. It naturally makes me want to try harder. So, on my next day off, I followed Bianca's instructions and went to my in-laws' home. When I arrived and parked, Bianca was already waiting on the porch. It was intimidating, but I tried to stay composed and greeted her. Good morning. The norm is to arrive 30 minutes early. Don't keep your superiors waiting, she said. Despite arriving early, I felt like leaving immediately. I understand punctuality for work, but why should I be reprimanded for her arbitrary standards? Arriving 30 minutes early might be inconvenient for others. I was still 10 minutes early, but before I could respond, she cut me off. Don't talk back. Am I running a military operation here? I sighed and resigned myself. I decided that no matter what happens, I will never open my heart to this person again, and I'll refuse to care for her in her old age. Even if offered a large sum of money, I refuse. Really? You're late for the appointment. Well, I'm off now, Bianca said, preparing to leave. I stopped her. Wait a minute. You called me here without any explanation, and I don't understand what's going on. Well, I'm going out until tonight. From now on, you'll need to come here on your days off to do housework and look after the person in the back room. With that, Bianca drove away. She was the hardest person to communicate with, though she seemed kind. When I met her with Stanley and Carmine, that wasn't the case at all. I considered leaving without doing anything to avoid further scolding, but more than that, I wanted to meet my grandmother-in-law. Bianca had mentioned her, but since she didn't seem to understand, Bianca decided on her own that I didn't need to attend the family wedding. We only had a simple meal, and there was no formal wedding ceremony. Later, Carmine and I planned to visit her together, but our days off never aligned, and embarrassingly, we never managed to. As I opened the entrance door, a shocking sight greeted me. The place was filthy, It wasn't quite a full-blown garbage house yet, but it was clear it was heading that way. The room was cluttered with a sea of belongings, and a mountain of laundry both clean and dirty spread across the floor. The kitchen sink was overflowing with dishes, and dust had accumulated in the corners. It was appalling. The last time I visited, the room had been clean and tidy. What on earth happened? This was unacceptable. As I pondered this, I heard noises coming from the back room. "Ah, grandmother-in-law," I said, heading towards the noise. "Excuse me." Since Bianca's call, I'd been visiting my in-laws' home as instructed. I realized that Bianca probably spends her days out and returns home late at night. It's clear she doesn't manage the house or care for grandmother-in-law at all, despite her demands for me to fulfill my duties as Carmine's wife. It's obvious Bianca isn't doing any of her own. Perhaps she felt empowered because I complied with her demands. Carmine must have been relieved to have a wife, but it's clear I'm still seen as a stranger. "I guess you're just a free housekeeper," Bianca once said aloud. "In today's world, treating a daughter-in-law like that is simply unacceptable." Naturally, I reported Bianca's behavior to Carmine, who was consistently apologetic. "You don't have to go there anymore," Carmine told me. He even said he would confront Bianca himself, but I asked him to hold off because I had a plan. I continued visiting the in-laws' home out of concern for grandmother-in-law. Carmine was pleased to see how well grandmother-in-law and I got along. After a few months, while cleaning the in-laws' home as usual, Bianca informed me there's a memorial service at the end of this month, and people will be gathering, but make sure you don't say anything unnecessary, okay? I smiled and replied, "Of course, Bianca." Bianca didn't seem fully satisfied with my compliance. The memorial service was for Carmine's grandfather, who had passed away before I married Carmine. He was known to be a gentle and kind man, and he and grandmother-in-law had a close bond. Often traveling together, Carmine told me they used to hold hands when they went out. Grandfather-in-law died of cancer, and grandmother-in-law had taken great care of him while the in-laws did nothing to help. It was unbelievable. Bianca emphasized the need for early preparation, so I promised, "Yes, I'll arrive 30 minutes early." Despite my assurances, she scolded me. "Your voice is too loud, keep it down." I was tempted to throw the TV remote at her, but managed to restrain myself. "You can talk like that now, but just wait. Get ready." I looked forward to the memorial service with anticipation. I arrived an hour early, despite being told 30 minutes was sufficient. As expected, Bianca was displeased. She stormed though, her anger palpable. "You're too early. There's such a thing as being too much." Honestly, seeing her face, I thought she was a monster. As I quickly cleaned the room and set up the tables, a cheerful male voice said, "Good morning." I went to the entrance to find the staff from a well-known local steakhouse standing there. I had visited the place with Carmine before and remembered the tender, delicious meat, though it was a bit pricey for frequent visits. Bianca, with a dismissive gesture, pushed me aside and greeted the staff with a high-pitched, overly friendly tone. "Good morning. Lovely weather today, isn't it?" "Oh, I heard someone say 'aw' for the first time," she said, and then went back to her preparations. "Hey, hurry up and get the food that arrived early." Bianca's annoying voice echoed through the kitchen. I headed to the kitchen and noticed something off. "Ah, Bianca, there seems to be one meal missing. Was this an oversight? Should I call?" With a cruel smile, Bianca replied, "It's not a mistake. I didn't prepare a portion for you." I was stunned. It was appalling that, with so many people gathering today, I was to be left out of the meal, feeling insulted. I tried to suppress my frustration, but Bianca's smirk only fueled my indignation. "A housekeeper like you is good enough for dog food. Go on. Sibo." She placed a bowl of leftover dog food in front of me. The humiliation was overwhelming, and I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. I would never understand. This woman must be an alien or something. I had no intention of engaging with someone so impossible to communicate with, so I shouted at Bianca in a made-up language, pretending to speak alien. For a moment, Bianca's face showed a flicker of fear at my outburst. "What? Are you out of your mind? Are you mocking me?" "Yes, I suppose so. I put up with this nonsense long enough. I can't stand living with someone as nasty as you. I don't know what you're so angry about, but would you be satisfied if we got a divorce?" "Huh? I won't allow a divorce. I have to hire another housekeeper, and that would be a waste of money." Bianca tried to grab me, but I shouted, "Stop it, how disgraceful." Just then, I noticed Carmine and my father-in-law, Stanley, along with Stanley's brother and his wife, who had traveled from far away. Bianca hadn't seen them because of our argument, but it was clear they had been watching. Stanley's presence seemed to subdue her, possibly due to his intervention or the shock of being caught. The memorial service proceeded modestly, and it was time for the meal. However, grandmother-in-law remained in her room, claiming she wasn't feeling well. Stanley mentioned that the steak here was excellent, something I hadn't had in a while. As I bustled around, bringing drinks and other items, Cindy, my aunt-in-law, called out kindly, "Allison, come and eat. You don't need to do all this." "Thank you, but it seems there's no steak for me," I replied, pretending to be dejected. When Cindy asked why, I said, "I can't really explain. Please ask Bianca." Cindy shot a stern look at Bianca, who seemed to shrink under her gaze. Cindy then fabricated a story. "Oh, I must have ordered the wrong number of steaks. I told Allison to eat my portion, but she refused, saying she was fine. I'm so fortunate to have such a considerate woman marry into the family." Bianca was sweating profusely, her eyes darting nervously. "Is that so?" Cindy asked, glancing at me with concern. "Yes, that's right." I struggled to hold back a laugh as I saw the look of utter disbelief on Bianca's face. Bianca is always so kind. She even points out when I'm lacking in social manners. "Today, instead of steak, she prepared this for me," I said, holding up the dog food Bianca had given me earlier. Bianca turned pale at the sight. "What's going on? What have you done to my precious wife?" Carmine demanded, but Bianca remained silent. In the tense silence, Stanley spoke up. "Well, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Allison is married now, so..." Stanley's attempt at humor only seemed to aggravate Carmine, who looked ready to confront him. To prevent any further escalation, I decided to call in my ace. "Susan." Everyone turned in surprise at my loud call. From the back room came a cheerful voice. "Yes." Out stepped Susan, grandmother-in-law. It turned out she was the same Susan from my pottery class. We were both taken aback the day Bianca first called me over. I hadn't expected grandmother-in-law to be Susan. We had spent many hours together, finishing housework and enjoying each other's company. The in-laws' home was a two-family setup, and Susan's living area was spotless. Bianca never suspected that Susan was actually in good health, since she was usually out late. We go out to eat and take walks, and I cherished the time spent with Susan. She had asked me not to reveal our connection to the in-laws. Though I was frustrated by Bianca's unreasonable demands, I found solace knowing it was only a matter of time before it would end. Susan had chosen not to attend the memorial service, as she didn't want to face the in-laws. She had always prayed for grandfather-in-law's peace and happiness after his passing. "Why, Mom, don't you have Alzheimer's?" Stanley asked, clearly puzzled. "That's just something this woman misunderstood on her own," Susan said, flaring at Bianca. Bianca, who had been shrinking in the background, now glared fiercely. "I wanted to live alone with my husband, but right after getting married, you moved in with us. You and your husband have been living luxuriously with the money saved from rent," Susan said, her voice firm. "I thought I'd be free when your transfer was decided, but then this woman decided to stay. It was a nightmare. I couldn't even discuss kicking her out because you were never home. I pretended to be hard of hearing to avoid talking to you, and then you assumed I had Alzheimer's. It's absurd." Bianca's face turned a deep red. What I couldn't forgive the most was being ignored during family celebrations. However, I was thrilled when I learned that Allison, whom I could get along with, was the spouse of my grandchildren, Susan said, smiling warmly at me. Bianca, clearly displeased, suddenly blurted out, "I'm sorry, Allison was always so cold to me. I was frustrated, which is why I played that prank today. I truly regret it, but if Allison had been kinder from the start, I wouldn't have. I had no intention of participating in your charade. All the condescending remarks you made, Bianca, I thought I'd have to endure them at home too," I said, pulling out a voice recorder I had secretly kept in my pocket. As I played back the recordings, Bianca's face grew progressively paler, and the tension in the room mounted. Susan and I had planned to expose everything during this family gathering. Despite the incident with the steak, Cindy began to laugh after listening. "You talk about social etiquette, but you've never worked a day in your life," Cindy remarked. It turned out Bianca had lived a life of leisure and had never worked. After the children were grown, she had started going out more frequently, leading to constant arguments with Stanley. Stanley himself was a habitual adulterer who came home late every night, maintaining a facade of family involvement for public appearances. Carmine, who had despised this charade, had left home as soon as he graduated high school. "That's why you should pack your bags and leave immediately. This house is a cherished memory of my late husband and me," I will never allow you to return, Susan said sternly to Stanley. And you, Carmine, I know you're busy with work, but come and visit occasionally. I understand if you don't want to. Get in such foolish parents, Susan said to Carmine with a hint of sadness. Then we're heading home, I said, as Carmine and I left. Bianca, furious, chased after us. Wait, clear up this misunderstanding. If I'm kicked out, I'll be in trouble. I thought if she didn't want to be in trouble, she shouldn't have harassed me in the first place, but it was too late for regrets now. I don't understand why you don't work. You seem to have a great grasp of how to be a respectful member of society, I said sarcastically as I got into the car. Bianca continued shouting outside, but I was unfazed. She could regret her choices as much as she wanted. As for my former parents-in-law, after being expelled from their home, Bianca went to Stanley's workplace, only to find that he was already living with his mistress. As Susan had predicted, Stanley discarded Bianca swiftly. To make matters worse, it was revealed that Bianca had been having an affair as well, with a married man. She was sued for damages by the man's wife. While the damages were somewhat balanced, due to both former in-laws' infidelities, Bianca would likely face ongoing financial repercussions. Stanley might have a slight reprieve if he received damages from his mistress, but to me, they were now just distant strangers. Despite the phony relationship I had heard about, Carmine has no lingering ties to his former parents, and has no intention of seeing them again. I feel the same way. As for us, we've decided to move into the parents-in-law's home where Susan lives. The house, once filled with unpleasant memories, has been transformed. We removed all of Bianca's collected furniture and made significant changes to the interior, making it feel like a brand new home. Susan, despite her age, remains surprisingly energetic, and I'm more than willing to care for her if she ever needs it. Moreover, our family will be expanding next year, and I'm looking forward to a future filled with happiness alongside my beloved family. My mother-in-law casually dropped a bombshell on me, leaving me stunned. We're going to be living together now. We just remodeled the house into a duplex for convenience. The property is in your name, right, Emma? Sorry to bother you, but could you please cover the $80,000 remodeling bill? As she and my husband laughed triumphantly, I felt a surge of resolve. I knew it was time to reveal the truth, a truth even my husband didn't know, and I had the evidence to prove it. I'm Emma Davis, 26, living a bit away from downtown in a nature-filled area. I work an office job and draw illustrations as a hobby, which I now share on social media. I enjoy reading the comments daily. My husband, who is 3 years older, and I are happily settled in an old farmhouse we bought right after our wedding. However, there's one recurring issue, a monthly visitor who always gives me a headache. Emma, I'm here. Please open up quickly. The persistent bang on the sliding door jolted me into action. Mother-in-law, I'll open it right away, I called out, even though there was a perfectly good doorbell right next to the door. I forced a smile as I opened the sliding door to see her standing there, looking tired from waiting, clutching a large bag. There are so many bugs around here. It's so annoying. Is George still at work? Poor thing. Even on a Saturday. Oh, I brought some of his favorite food. As she chattered rapidly, I managed a strained smile while letting her in. My mother-in-law, who visits once a month, is my husband's mother and insists on taking care of him even after our marriage. I'm grateful for her help, though it comes with its own set of challenges. The last time she visited, she rearranged the food in the fridge, making me scramble for ingredients the next morning. Before we married, my husband had said, if my parents ever need care, we'll live together. I want you to understand that. Though the thought of giving up our beloved farmhouse was disappointing, I accepted it. What bothered me more was the idea of living with my mother-in-law full-time. It's a thought that casts a shadow over my mood. 2 years into our farmhouse life, I learned that my father-in-law had slipped on the stairs and broken his leg. They will need our help from now on. Let's live together, just as we discussed before our marriage, my husband said. Yes, I'm worried too, so I think it's a good idea. Can I continue my drawing hobby? I asked, concerned about how this move might affect my creative time. Though I was worried about my father-in-law's health, I agreed to move in together. Still, I couldn't shake the anxiety about losing time for my drawing hobby amidst the demands of housework and caregiving. Whether he was aware of my anxiety or not, my husband simply said, I want you to prioritize the house, and left for his office. Left alone in my room, I felt like I was starting to give up on my selfish husband. As I reviewed my illustrations, one by one, I tried to sort through my feelings. Just as I had come to terms with living with them, an unexpected event threw everything into chaos. While working at my job, I suddenly experienced numbness in my hands and feet and was overwhelmed by intense dizziness. I collapsed. Thanks to a colleague who quickly called an ambulance, my life was not in immediate danger, but medical tests revealed I had suffered a stroke at a young age. Despite having been warned about high blood pressure in previous health checks, I regretted neglecting it. The entire process from diagnosis to hospitalization, including surgery and rehabilitation, took about 2 months. During this time, it became clear how little concern my husband had shown for my condition. Once I was diagnosed, I called my husband with trembling hands. His response was disheartening. I see. So, living together will be postponed. I couldn't process the fact that his main concern was the delay in moving in with my in-laws, not my health. With my father-in-law still hospitalized with his fracture, there was no immediate need for caregiving, which was a small blessing, allowing me to focus on my treatment. Also, since we don't have children, there were no additional worries there. Suddenly, I remember my mother-in-law's frequent comments about wanting to see a grandchild soon. I shook off the thought and picked up my sketchbook. Recently, I'd been too busy preparing for the move and dealing with medical issues to focus on my illustrations. I realized that once we moved in with my in-laws, I likely have even less time to draw. I decided to view this hospitalization period as a precious gift of free time and resolved to fully enjoy my hobby. When this time was over, I vowed to do my best for my husband and in-laws, whether it was housework or anything else. The 2-month hospital stay passed quickly, and finally, the discharge date arrived. My husband casually offered to pick me up, but wanting some time alone before returning home, I declined, feeling a bit guilty. As I rode the bus home, the familiar landscape outside the window reminded me that I was nearing my destination. The sunlight filtering through the lush green leaves was dazzling, filling me with a bittersweet sense of farewell to this natural haven. My in-laws' house, located closer to the city center, promised a major shift in my life. Feeling a touch of loneliness, I slowly disembarked at my familiar bus stop. As I approached what I thought was my soon-to-be farewell home, I was taken aback by an unexpected sight. Instead of the beloved old house I had known, there stood a completely unfamiliar residence. After being in the hospital for about 2 months, I checked my bearings and surroundings, but it was clear that this was indeed the right location. With no other options, I hesitantly pressed the intercom button. A familiar voice responded, "Yes, unmistakably my husband's." Still in a state of confusion, I replied softly, "It's Michelle." The front door creaked open, and my husband, dressed casually, emerged. "Ah, welcome home. You're back earlier than I expected. I took the day off today. I could have picked you up." I interrupted him, still grappling with disbelief. "George, what happened to our house? Why has it changed so much?" Despite my anxiety, George simply replied with a vague, "What's up? What happened?" showing no intention of addressing my question. Just then, I heard laughter coming from inside the house. With a sinking feeling, I pushed past my husband and headed toward the living room. When I opened the unfamiliar door leading to the living room, I was met with the sight of my mother-in-law lounging on the couch, watching TV and laughing heartily while clutching her stomach. "Why is my mother-in-law in this house?" I blurted out in confusion. "Oh, Michelle, welcome back. Hospital stays can be long, but don't worry, I took care of the house while you were gone," she said nonchalantly. I was puzzled by her comment about taking care of the house. Could it be chores she was referring to? An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me as I pressed her for answers. "Why has the old house changed so much?" I demanded. Without a shred of remorse, she cheerfully explained, "Well, we're all going to live together, right? So I just remodeled it into a duplex to make it more comfortable." The phrase, "just remodeled it into a duplex," echoed in my mind. I had expected my mother-in-law to be intrusive, but I never anticipated her remodeling the house without permission. And weren't we supposed to be moving into my in-laws' house, closer to the city center? I recalled her frequent complaints about the bugs and the distance from the station during her visits. Despite that, why had so many things changed? "Oh, and there's one more important thing I need to tell you," my mother-in-law said, turning off the TV with a grin. "The remodeling cost a bit. I believe the title to this house is under your name, Michelle, so could you handle the payment?" With a chuckle, and no trace of apology, she added, "It's $80,000, her smile widening. Remodeling cost the title to this house, $80,000. I repeated in disbelief, feeling as if I'd been punched in the gut. My legs began to tremble, and I could only stare at her, speechless. My mother-in-law continued to laugh fearlessly, while George, who had been at the entrance, quietly slipped into the living room. When I saw George, my feet instinctively moved toward him, clinging to a faint hope that he would support me. I relayed my mother-in-law's demands to him, desperately seeking a sympathetic reaction. But his response was cold and indifferent. Well, that's about right. Take care of it, will you? Of course, this is the kind of man he is. When I had a stroke, he was more concerned about our living arrangements than my health. He's the kind of man who stops if his mother says green means stop and goes if she says red means go, always thinking his mother is right. The growing discomfort and dissatisfaction with my husband boiled over. I felt a deep, burning resolve. I'm done with this family. I'll leave them behind. I understand now, George. I'm going to divorce you and your mother. No, Cecilia, handle the renovation costs yourself. With that, I turned on my heel and headed for the door, but they weren't ready to let me go so easily. I've been losing interest in you anyway, so it's no big deal. But remember, this house is in your name, Emma, so you have a responsibility to pay. That's right. Feel free to leave, but settle your dues first, they insisted. Their selfishness left me astonished, and I sighed in exasperation. I imagined them smirking, reveling in their perceived victory, but I refused to look back. Standing tall, I said, "You keep saying the house is in my name, George, but did you forget that ownership has been transferred to you?" Their laughter halted abruptly, replaced by visible panic as I revealed the truth. They laughed it off, dismissing my claim as a ploy to avoid payment. I reminded them that George had specifically asked me to transfer the property to his name when we married because he didn't want it in his wife's name for appearances. Since I didn't care about the property title, I had complied immediately. The sudden shift in their demeanor confirmed their realization of the truth. The two who had been so complacent now displayed growing panic. "I don't recall saying such a thing. There's no proof anyway," George said, trying to deflect. Anticipating this, I turned back to face them, walked past them, and opened a drawer in a shelf from our old house. "Let's see, it should be around now. Here it is," I said as I rummaged through the drawer. I pulled out the document showing the property and house ownership details and held it up for them to see, pointing to the section indicating that the ownership was now in George's name. I watched as his face drained of color. "That's fraud. I never thought you'd actually do it, and I certainly can't pay $80,000, he shouted, his voice filled with panic. Disgusted by his reaction, I said, "Since having a decent conversation seems impossible, let's handle this through lawyers from now on. Cecilia, your son is in quite a bind, so please take good care of him from now on." With that, I gave a final, cold smile to my mother-in-law, who stood there stunned, and turned my back on them, leaving their home for good. Despite several calls from my husband, I ignored him and opted to communicate formally through a lawyer. Given our already strained relationship and the issues with my mother-in-law, the divorce was settled without complications. Regarding George's claim that the name change was fraud, it was determined that there was an agreement since the property title had been changed at our marriage 2 years ago. My lawyer reassured me with a smile that there was nothing fraudulent or illegal about the name change. With that confirmation, all the lingering uncertainty I had felt was resolved. It seemed that the cost of renovating the house, which my husband had insisted would be my responsibility, would indeed be covered entirely by me upon my hospital discharge. I couldn't help but appreciate the spiteful irony of the situation. After enduring surgery and rehabilitation, I was finally discharged from the hospital, only to be thrust into a new kind of hell. The house was in my husband's name, making it his responsibility to cover the renovation costs. Ultimately, he was left in financial ruin, and I secured alimony as part of the divorce settlement. My husband, unable to repay the massive sum he owed, was forced to borrow from dubious source, or perhaps he didn't manage to borrow at all. During the tumultuous period with my husband and mother-in-law, I received an apology from my father-in-law, Bob, who was still recovering from his broken leg. He said, "I'm sorry for my wife's and son's behavior." Though it seemed Bob wasn't directly involved in the mess, he had ignored both his wife and my cold husband throughout our marriage. After a brief response to Bob's message, I decided to sever all ties with that family and start anew. Since then, my health has steadily improved, and I've returned to work. While I used to draw illustrations cautiously under my husband's watchful eye, I now have the freedom to immerse myself fully in my art. What began as a hobby has blossomed into a career, with job offers flooding, and from my social media platforms where I share my work. Today, I'm on my way to view an old farmhouse in a quaint rural town. My dream is to purchase this farmhouse with my alimony and savings and open an art studio. As I travel by bus, I reflect on the day I left the hospital, a turning point that changed my life forever. The natural beauty outside, just as vibrant as that day, fills me with anticipation. The sunlight sparkling through the leaves fills me with excitement for the new chapter that lies ahead.